vision and mission simply is to build a path so Pakistan in 10 years or so can actually break into the top 50 education systems of the world, right? Now, whether it gets there or in 10 years or it takes 15 years or 20 years is entirely up to political will and the financing that is put behind this strategy. But, what we're trying to do is to at least have a roadmap to it, right? If you follow that roadmap, we think with a large probability of certainty that you can break into the top 50 education systems of the world. The goal of the strategy is to focus on three things and, reform education by focusing on three things. One is by transforming classroom practice from rote learning to 21st century education. The second goal is to build digital literacy system-wide at all levels. Now, I would argue that a digital literacy is a game changer, right? So it's not just something that is optional; it's mandatory, right? It's probably more important than writing in today's world, right? To be able to know how to use the internet and all that, and all Pakistanis at all levels need to have this capability to be able to do this responsibly and competently.
लेकिन मेरे इल्म में ऐसे systems नहीं हैं जहाँ पे एडटेक ने बहुत ज़्यादा ट्रांसफॉर्म किया हो पूरे मुल्क की एजुकेशन को, या इस तरह की प्रॉब्लम जैसी बात हो रही है कि 26 मिलियन बच्चा अगर आउट ऑफ स्कूल है, वो प्रॉब्लम एडटेक वगैरह से सॉल्व हो जाए. इट्स अ पार्ट ऑफ द सोल्यूशन and it has a promise of huge potential, but so far we haven't seen the potential being achieved, and it would be nice to think about that and try to get that going so that we can push the limits and see what actually is achievable under this the umbrella of what is called EdTech.
How do we go forward? Either you can, I don't know if you can go forward with everything and succeed on such a big thing, or you go with, okay, we'll just go with teacher training. My recommendation would be that maybe we think about doing this only in one domain. For example, in the computer science domain. And we try to create a paradigm, make it successful with content, with teacher training, with certification standards, and so on. In one domain, make that strong, because we know that domain can already, it's fast growing, and we can unlock a lot of money by putting more people into that domain, and then move to other sectors.
Why the role of academia is important? So this is an understood fact that so development of a nation is actually synonymous to quality of education. So if you have to improve the quality, then you have to work on all four different pillars, right? So it's teaching, the teaching material, your teachers training, assessments, and then the school leaders.
Okay, folks. Without further ado, let's begin this very important webinar on trying to understand the government's new proposed strategy for putting our education together again, called NDIES or NDIES. Zulfiqar Qazilbash, who is our lead here, he's been working with the government of Pakistan to try and develop a new education strategy, which is being adopted, and hopefully, I think Faisal Bari is here too. He's a professor at LUMS. Everybody knows him, writes very well in the newspapers, major education leader in the country. Then we've got Abid Rafique Saab as well, who's teaching in LUMS and is also an education scholar. We've got a great panel, and we've got Mahmood, who's got an EdTech company called Knowledge Platform. So we've got a great panel. And I think Faisal will be able to tell you, we've had many, many education policies and strategies, including the single national curriculum, and the Zala curriculum, and this curriculum, and that thing. So we've got plenty of education strategies. The best that I can say is that I think education is like the religious version of God or Christianity or whatever, that God wants to make us in his image. So I think the education gurus also want to make people in their image, and they want to design education and force it on kids. I come from a different school, and I want to put that up front. that perhaps education should be on demand and not forced down the kids' throats. But that's a controversy that I want to leave on the table. And let's see what Zulfiqar and all of these experts say about that. But without further ado, let's take Zulfiqar Qazilbash, whose background is very interesting. He comes from Silicon Valley, he's an engineer, has done startups, has made money, and now come to serve Pakistan. And is deeply interested in education, has spent a lot of time doing education policy, education things, also doing education in other countries. Zulfiqar has designed this policy, and let's hear directly from Zulfiqar. Over to you, Zulfiqar. Tell us what this policy is.
As Nadeem, Dr. Nadeem Haque said, let me first introduce you a little bit about myself. I am essentially I come a technology background. I spent 22 years in the United States and basically was a vice president of a couple of corporations before I started my own startup, which I exited in 2008, and then came to Pakistan purely because of my parents, and also I got a good opportunity here. I was chief commercial officer of a telecom company for 6 years. After that, I did consulting and I came into education, and I saw that this is a problem that can be overhauled. In my opinion, it can be overhauled through digital and innovation. So for the past 5 years, I've been focused on this sector. I was the technical advisor into the NDIES 2 program, UK-funded program on Pakistan education innovation. That's where I kind of learned about this sector. Really, this was back in 2017. Or uske baad, I've been working with the government pro bono, giving them my time for some time, and then they had a need of a national edtech expert. So I got through that selection process, and currently I'm the educational advisor or the education technology advisor to the federal government of federal education and professional training. So this strategy that I'm sharing, has about 5 years of learning experience built into it. We've done a few programs and learned from them. And now we believe we have a strategy that can get Pakistan, can fix this public education problem, but we need political support. I'm going to talk a little bit about the strategy, and then I'll talk about current projects and activities that have been underwritten by the strategy, and then give you a flavor of the future roadmap, about 25 minutes. So what we've done is we've developed a national strategy that makes digital learning a permanent and core feature of the public education system, right? It provides a best practice methodology and programming roadmap for leveraging digital and innovation to transform the current public school pedagogy into 21st. And then it provides an effective implementation framework. So it's not just abstract, theoretical. It provides an effective implementation framework for a results-based procurement model, in collaboration with the private sector to improve digital learning and learning outcomes in the system. Now we are talking about public education. It's a big leap, a very ambitious leap, and we recognize that. Vision and mission simply is to build a path so Pakistan in 10 years or so can actually break into the top 50 education systems of the world, right? Now, whether it gets there or in 10 years or it takes 15 years or 20 years is entirely up to political will and the financing that is put behind this strategy. But, what we're trying to do is to at least have a roadmap to it, right? If you follow that roadmap, we think with a large probability of certainty that you can break into the top 50 education systems of the world. So that is basically the whole, what is the word? Rationale behind the strategy. So the goal of the strategy is to focus on 3 things and, reform education by focusing on 3 things. One is by transforming classroom practice from rote learning to 21st century education, right? Educationists know what that is. The first goal. The second goal is to build digital literacy system-wide at all levels. Now, I would argue that, a digital literacy is a game changer, right? So it's not just something that is optional, it's mandatory, right? It's probably more important than writing in today's world, right? To be able to know how to use the internet and all that. And all Pakistanis at all levels need to have this capability to be able to do this responsibly and competently.
Could describe because I get the feeling that it's just reading on the net, is it?
It's more than that. It's being able to be put at all levels of functioning, from your family life to your productive life, to be able to use digital tonnage, digital channels to be able to evolve yourself, build, get information, to be able to do research. All of these things, in your life. The reason why you and I are sitting here and, enjoying a better standard of living than possibly, somebody who is a retail shopkeeper is because we have these advantages, right? We have the advantage of English, and then we have the advantages of digital literacy, that we can get information, we can get access, all of this. So the goal of education has to be build this competency, multifaceted competency at all levels, right? And it's not going to be, the students are not going to learn unless the teachers learn, unless the administrators learn. So this is a system-wide transformation. And then finally, the goal of the strategy is to establish quality and performance management and a framework for evolving it every year. Focus on outcome and impact rather than technology. And like I said, ultimately we have to have a goal, and the goal is to get there into the top 50 K-12 education systems of the world. This is the implementation framework. It has two major elements. First is the execution model, right? The execution model is that the government gets out of the execution of these service delivery and focuses on the administration, the research, the monitoring and evaluation, and builds capacity beyond what exists today in these levels. So it takes capacity from there and build this in the government to be able to design projects, design and implement projects, and also at the federal level help provinces with the adoption of this strategy. Now, I must say the provinces as yet have not signed on this strategy. It is a federal government initiative that we are today basically focusing on our institutions, which is the Federal Directorate of Education and the Federal College of Education, and all the relevant institutions like NCHD and BECS and all of that for out-of-school children. So we are going to implement the strategy here, but we will have a model that can be followed by the provinces. It's up to them after the 18th Amendment whether they want to follow us or not, but we strongly think we have a powerful sort of mechanism that can be implemented nationwide and prevent different regions and provinces from falling behind. We need to do this at the national level, but of course these discussions need to happen, right? We will work primarily from implementation. We will outsource it to the Pakistan EdTech industry and build their capacity also, right? As they get more revenue, as they get more opportunity, they will be able to hire better and better and better people, and we will have this engine of innovation and research-led, outcome and impact will be, they will build the capacity to be able to tell us before we use their solution that yes, our solution works in their, in your environment. So, all this is being led by a center of excellence, which we want to partner with the university in, a top-tier university that has both an EdTech program as well as an IT program, right? The digital program. And so this I think you're talking about LUMS, you're talking about NUST, you're talking about AKU, and probably a couple of others, but not very much more beyond that. So the Center of Excellence will lead, our capacity building. What do we certify our new TD skills? The research element, what are the research elements? I mean, health industry has a whole regime, of experimental empirical trials before, it's agreed that this medicine works and can be applied. We need probably a simpler one because it's very expensive, but we need something like this for our industry also. Then we need standards, what are the benchmarks, where is the learning starting from, where is it going? And then incubation of new innovation. We're talking about AI, we're talking about Industry 4.0 solutions. This is something that needs to be packaged into EdTech, and all this direction needs to come through research in academia. So the Center of Excellence, along with the digital and innovation wing, are, birds of the, sort of complement each other. there is a nexus between them. The digital and innovation wing focuses on implementing the, a center of excellence focuses on building a roadmap of innovations that are then, given to the private sector to solve and come back with solutions. And then this is applied to school. So this is sort of the implementation model. And as far as the methodology of concerned, how we develop our program, that has 7 pillars. So the first one is, research-led programming. Everything will be according to the gaps identified. So we will not waste, effort or resources. We will partner with private sector for service delivery. We will link service delivery procurement with the private sector to outcome and impact. It's not important that they complete a project. If they install something, they train our teachers, and then they leave, and then nothing happens, that's not a successful project, right? So they have to stay with the project, make sure they deliver certain, everybody is, adopting what they're doing in class practice, everybody's engaged. And so, more and more our projects with them will become like that. They already like that, but this will become standard practice. And then we set up with the university center of excellence. This needs to be a bi-party effort. We don't think of the university as a transactional relationship. It's more of a partnership where they come in, own certain things, and we share resources, right? They use their research budget. We essentially give them some components, and it's a partnership where we kind of give them the opportunity to redirect the talent that they have, academic talent that they have, towards K-12 education, right? And then we have a whole system of gathering data through digital analytics that we've defined in this strategy, which is a very important component. And then, innovative financing infrastructure, where we use funding and financing as effectively as possible and open up new channels of financing. And then finally, we don't want this to be a federal strategy. So we're going to try and incentivize provinces through program value funding. There is a large number of previous investments that have yielded little benefit across the globe, right? Just because you digitalize a system doesn't mean that, outcomes are going to improve. But there have been the right, implemented the right way and then implemented the wrong way. The others have dramatically improved outcomes. So it does work in certain situations. I mean, there are instances where, Nobel Prize winning studies where digital and innovation has increased outcomes like dramatically, more than people thought was possible in certain situations. But like medicine, it needs to establish that the solution works by research and outcome impact trial certifications, right? Health industry example is not exactly right for us, but it's because it's too time consuming and expensive. But the key questions remain the same. Does what you're proposing work? Does it work better than less expensive comparable solutions? And you can only answer this if you yourself have the capacity to do randomized trials and active research and all of that, right? So this becomes part of this. This is sort of getting into the more detail of the center of excellence. I won't get into this, but we have university here, so the major functions are that university contributes building and space, and we pay for the programming, for a certain amount of time, and then we have a roadmap where it becomes self-sustaining through revenue achieved by certification of value proposition of various tech players. So we did a lot of research, but settled on the McKinsey model. They studied about 200 interventions across the globe in 60 countries, and came up with this formula of what is required and works for the strategies that succeed. The first one is you have to fulfill all basic student needs. So you have to include school meals, transportation solutions, second language solutions into this. You have to provide scaffolding for low skilled teachers, right? There is things like scripted lesson plans and things like that give you to a certain level. And you need to bring up all the schools to a system to a minimum quality threshold. So that has to be benchmarking on national and international levels, implementing new pedagogy models, creating appropriate organizational structure, the production of high quality performance data, ensuring teacher and school accountability, creating appropriate financing structure. All of these things are addressed in the strategy. The transformation framework is simple. You develop a baseline status quo, which we have done, and then you develop an intervention cluster, which we have proposed and are in the process of lining up funding for, and then you contextualize according to your system. What works in Vietnam does not necessarily work in Pakistan, right? So you have to apply your programming after primary research or adjust it while you're applying it for some period of time and figure out the changes that are required to address all the gaps. So it's not just you leave your product, get training, and leave. This model does not work. Baseline, I will not get into the details. Well, maybe I'll just cover the primary one. The problems in our primary grades are we have weak foundational learning. We get very bad results on ACER or any international EGMA type of program. We've been doing this for the last 20 years. So that's a problem. Second language problem, we don't have a good solution for people who speak Pashto or Balochi and come to our public school. They are kind of lost till they figure out how to speak in Urdu on their own or with limited help. And there is no remedial pathway. So if somebody is not learning in class, to a certain extent, teacher engages them, but if they don't follow, then they are kind of left as orphans. So these are our problems. We are focusing them by, introducing remedial and gifted child streaming and focusing more on language programs, specifically in the primary grades. Like that, we have a solution for middle, senior, and even out of school children. Sorry?
Sorry, my mistake.
Okay. This is the distance learning infrastructure. And, it's too technical. I will not get into the details, but basically it's about using the cloud across Pakistan to provide every child, every teacher access to learning content and assessments and certification programs, and for them to be able to do lifelong learning. It's not just focused on the curriculum. It also has an informal learning component and teacher education. It's continuously professional development, all of this. So this distance learning infrastructure is a key delivery mechanism. It's much cheaper than alternatives like books and things like that. So, we can do a lot more with this, right? So we are going to use this. This is the central infrastructure that is used by the strategy. It even gives services to schools. This is the kind of stuff just to kind of, we don't publicize this. I think one of the problems with the government is that we are not very good at promoting ourselves. I mean, we just kind of, everybody bashes us all the time, but these are some of the things that have occurred in distance learning, right? We launched a TV channel during the coronavirus. Then we are launching an e-Talim, which is the internet portal right now. We already have the content for all grades. We already have an accelerated learning program for the people who had corona learning losses and want to get back into school. And we are now have started with a small but growing library of non-formal education. Just like, and similarly, this is for everybody, but, we've done, 3 pilots in the Federal Directorate of Education related to digital and innovation. We are building this state-of-the-art, virtual teacher CPD certification program in the Federal College of Education. And then ultimately, the out-of-school effort will result in a virtual school where, we've realized that everybody doesn't want to get educated for 12 years, right? So we need a shorter path to them. If you are, Ustad Shagid type, a mechanic or something, and you just want to be digitally literate from foundational assessment, we will give you that kind of certification pathway. You don't need to go all the way to metric. So we are going to do those kind of things. In terms of what we've already engaged with the edtech industry, we have got scripted lessons for the primary. We want to build on that. We have supplementary learning solutions. We have teacher professional development. We have accelerated learning. Basically, the entire content they have made and given to us, which covers, from ECD to K-12, every subject that is currently taught by the federal board. Teacher training is obviously the biggest component of this strategy. So we are engaging private sector specialists to manage creation of certification program and digital transformation of teacher training, right? All teachers will get their continuous professional development through their smartphone. This program is a multi-level teacher induction and CPD continuous professional development program designed in collaboration with the top-tier industry. I think it's in the process of being selected, but it's either going to be LUMS, NUST, or AKU. Different solution providers will be engaged for primary, middle, and higher grades. Training effectiveness will be managed through field observation and digital data channels through something we call the performance monitoring cell. You can see pictures of it. It is currently in pilot right now. It is not formally launched, but I believe it is operational and it's state of the art. If you go and see it, it just looks like Google. In fact, I encourage everyone to go see it. And the financial compensation for the people who run this program for us will be tied to predefined outcome and impact. What learning games have this whole, has, improved, right? So that's what they get graded on. This is kind of how the system looks like. The teacher gets their training through the smartphone, and there is a mission control that manages which teacher is doing well, which teacher is doing bad, and then kind of has peer structures as well as mentoring, coaching services till you build up that teacher performance to a certain level of excellence. There's 3 levels to this certification program. In level 1, the teacher gets scripted learning, but we understand that is limiting, in terms of career. So if you certify for level 2, you can modify the lesson plans, and if you are at level 3, you don't need to follow any lesson plans. You can create your own lesson plans. So teachers who are ambitious can get out of the scripted lesson plan and take control of the classroom. But we believe that introducing scripted learning initially will set a floor to teacher quality and ensure that pedagogy changes to 21st century pedagogy. So that is kind of an important thing for us. This is what happens in the school. You have your normal pathway. You also have the remedial support, right? And the gifted. So you have different options for them. And because of the assessment, the annual exam is not that important anymore, right? You can have assessments for different things at different times of the year. It's very easy to do that, surveys and assessments through the digital track. So that's how we monitor education at a more holistic level than just annual exams, right? School and teacher evaluations. We will have 2 parallel rating systems for the schools, one for their facility and HR, and one for their innovation and learning and development budgets will be set so that people with high rating systems are rewarded and people with low ratings are offered funding to upgrade themselves. Teacher performance leaderboards, we will recognize reward performance, but for that, we need to know who the best teachers are. So there'll be a leaderboard, and maybe the best teachers will get medals or some kind of recognition. Fellows, teaching, all of these things are being discussed. In fact, those are the kind of things we want to reach out to private sector to help us define. But fact of the matter is that if we want to have that goal of top 50 thing in 10 years, we also need to focus on the character qualities. We have been focusing on foundation literacies, competencies. We have not been, we've kind of addressed them, but we haven't set them on a benchmark in an evolving thing. So we're working on those things. But what we are lacking is the character qualities: curiosity, initiative, persistence, adaptability, leadership. This is the list according to the World Economic Forum. And this is where we need private sector help or, to come to us with innovative solutions that introduce this into our curriculum and our programs. Similarly, productive life, as Dr. Nadeem mentioned, how do we link education to a productive life? So World Economic Forum says these are the skills that are needed. Pakistan today does not teach or test for any of these skills, and this or the local contextualized version of them will be added into this program. And again, this is an area where we are willing to partner with the private sector on. This is the new certification role. That education should not be on a fixed model. Essentially, you look at the market and you figure out the opportunities. This is what the opportunities through a consulting assignment, that I did actually on a pro bono basis, essentially today indicate that these are the opportunities in the urban and the rural areas, and we want to address them, through new certification programs. This is the non-formal education guide. Very briefly, the kind of skills that are needed, again, to have a self-actualized life. Why should our low strata of society not get introduced to these? Why is this a privilege of only our class? So we are going to democratize these skills through this program. We have an opportunity to, for that, we have to have new learning assessment models. This is a neglected model. Not everything can be touched by MCQs, so you need different ways of assessing, and communication. You need essays, collaboration. You need project-based learning, and critical thinking. You need to teach logic, theory of learning, like in the IB model. So we are going to create those kind of new assessment models. This ultimately is going to lead to a modification to our metric and FSC programs because, obviously these were designed some while ago, and we are going to leverage the best practices from the international models. Maybe there is going to be a metric plus FSC plus program similar to what is happening in Norway, or in the IB model, the information theory, and the research paper. All of those things we are kind of looking at. And the whole idea is that there is a nexus with teaching when you talk about certification, right? So you need to develop the teachers first, and then you can evolve your learning and skill certification. But today we are already experimenting with the AI. Federal Board has an AI program that it's working on. And then we are working in the National Institute of Teacher Excellence in Teacher Education in the scripted learning paradigm. So I think, we have a way that we feel comfortable that we can manage this evolution in our certification also. Plans are to build laboratory schools where universities like LUMS, NUST, AKU will be asked to come and, research and demonstrate new solutions and new intervention. Why should we ultimately follow IB? We should develop our own IB, right? And then we will develop national quality of learning standards for public and private sector and propose new regulatory framework to implement this strategy. All of that is required, right? And, in terms of projects, the biggest project is the virtual school that will address the out-of-school children, as well as provide supplementary learning outside of school for people who want to do homeschooling or want to also learn from home. And all of this will be underwritten by a new data framework that we are developing as part of the strategy, which will add learning performance of the system into NEMIS. NEMIS is the National Education Management Information System that produces education statistics every year. Cost, well, rough estimate shows that it'll take about $2 billion every 5 years to do this, right? I mean, this is an add-on to the current education system. Now, this is for the entire country, right? So technologies like that it, has to be refreshed every 5 years, 7 years. So that's why it's a recurring kind of a bill. But $2 billion every, 5 years means a cost of $400 million a year. Now, if you're really serious about education, this is actually, if you just kind of compare it to our GDP, this is not an too high a sum. It is a doable sum. We make these kind of investments when we do energy projects and road projects and things like that. Why not spend them on education? This is our future, right? That's the argument of the strategy. And in order to be effective, to effectively work with the private sectors, we also need them to become not just technology providers, right? We need them to have this focus on continuously improving content, continuously improving solution, have their own training and performance monitoring capacity, community mobilization expertise, active field research capability. So they are more of a service provider to us. And we're building this roadmap collaboratively with their industry association called LUMS Association. So we'll do that. But globally, governments and large corporations have successfully used their market power to shape industry to fit their needs. So this kind of transformation is required for private sector to be useful to us, right? If they're just a product company and it's the government responsibility is to figure out how to get these products to actually go to outcome and impact or show outcome and impact, that is a very difficult thing to do. And, then that's very, very high risk. So we want to put the burden of doing this on the private sector. This is something we are talking to them about. In terms of who we need to implement this strategy, we will obviously have to work with the digital infrastructure operators, the PTCLs of the world, the ESP EdTech industry, which is, accessible to us through their industry association. Everybody can join that industry association. If there is anybody here who's not part of the LUMS Association, should become a member. Hardware vendors, indigenous ones preferably, but that gives us screens, servers, devices, clickers, primary research firms that come up with ways of evaluating needs, gaps, evaluation in our system, education consultants that helps us with standards, policies, guidelines, framework. I mean, Center of Excellence is part of that, but you will always need these people to bring in the expertise. And, it looks very complicated, but it's not a simple problem. That's all I'll say. So we already talked about the university-based Center of Excellence and the Digital and Innovation Wing, right? The ones in orange. This is part of how one is the high-level strategy, intellectual piece of this, and the other one is the implementation piece of it. Then our regime within the PEPRA rules, we will incentivize outcome and impact and pay for performance, not just execution. Impact evaluations are a big part of that. And then as support to the private sector industry, we are building digital content studios. We will offer some of our schools as laboratory schools where they can do their institution pilots. And then, we will have schools of tomorrow where technology is tested out with our best teachers and most flexible environment, and, figure out the bugs and, kinks and all of that before we deploy it in scale, to make sure that we have a method behind this and, all the right best practices are applied. The new financing frameworks, we're introducing the concept of risk capital where people can come in and sponsor projects, but they lose money if the outcome and impact is not achieved, and they get their investment back if it is. So those kind of CSR type of arrangements we are going to propose and formalize with the industry, and possibly like a social impact bond kind of a thing. And then, but it's important here to socialize the difference between growth and development, right? If we are serious, if Pakistan is serious about building a new generation that can develop Pakistan, then we need to borrow from the future to pay for their preparation today, to equip them for this huge undertaking, right? There is no such thing as a free lunch. And, we always focus on economic growth, but I think a good example I heard was, if you improve a jhompadi by 6% or 9% or 12%, have you really achieved anything? Sometimes you need to, give up on that jhompadi and, start from the foundations and build a proper house. That is what is called, development. So that's the difference between economic growth and development. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Zulfiqar. That is very good. A lot happening there. Let's go to our first discussant, Faisal Bari. Why don't you, Faisal Bari, everybody knows, professor at LUMS, director of the Mahboob Center, has done a lot of work, writes regularly in Dawn, and has an excellent column. Faisal, go ahead.
जी बहुत शुक्रिया एक तो इनवाइट करने का और दूसरा ये प्रेजेंटेशन का भी. So a number of points. I think it is very good to have the federal government set up a strategy and a frame for EdTech में को कैसे leverage करना है, क्योंकि ये बहुत ज़्यादा missing थी. बहुत सारी चीज़ें चल रही थी मुख्तलिफ एरियाज में, बट और पायलट्स भी हो रहे थे, लोग कह भी रहे थे कि इसमें चेंजेस आ रहे हैं, लेकिन ओवरऑल कोई स्ट्रैटेजी या कोई ऐसा फ्रेम नहीं था जिसमें इसको देखा जा सके कि गवर्नमेंट का रोल क्या होगा, प्राइवेट सेक्टर का ये वो. सो इट्स गुड टू पुट दिस टुगेदर. उसमें छोटी चीज़ें बड़ी चीज़ें चेंज होंगी बाद में, वो खैर बात की बात है, बट टू हैव दैट फर्स्ट cut of that is very important so that we can have some predictability and consistency in terms of how people should see the future, how should they think about making these investments, etc. ये ज़रूरी है. और अगर ऐसा हो जाए कि गवर्नमेंट irrespective of who's in power and where वो कुछ commit कर सकें कि ये frame के basics रहेंगे, so that would be excellent for people who want to make medium to long term investments in EdTech. बहुत सारे इसमें सवाल इस तरह से उठते हैं मुश्किल के. So the promise of EdTech has been there for a long time now, and अभी तक कोई कम से कम मेरे इल्म में, और मैं अपने कम इल्मी का इतराफ़ शुरू ही कर लेता हूँ, लेकिन मेरे इल्म में ऐसे सिस्टम्स नहीं हैं जहाँ पे एडटेक ने बहुत ज़्यादा ट्रांसफॉर्म किया हो पूरे मुल्क की एजुकेशन को, या इस तरह की प्रॉब्लम जैसी बात हो रही है कि 26 मिलियन बच्चा अगर आउट ऑफ स्कूल है, वो प्रॉब्लम एडटेक वगैरह से सॉल्व हो जाए. इट्स अ पार्ट ऑफ द सोल्यूशन and it has a promise of huge potential, but so far we haven't seen the potential being achieved. And it would be nice to think about that and try to get that going so that we can push the limits and see what actually is achievable under this the umbrella of what is called EdTech. देखें, EdTech में बहुत सारे मसाइल इस तरह के भी हैं कि जब कोविड आया था तो even universities like LUMS, where people think that the students are very privileged, etc., we had great problems in going online, in managing online, with sometimes for simple reasons like not every student had a device, not every student had access to stable and broad enough internet. Not every student had a place to sit at home and to study, and so on and so forth. And these are, as I said, I work at LUMS, so these are issues that LUMS faced. When you're thinking of children in K to 12, and when you're thinking of the spread across Pakistan with a lot of, given our poverty rates and what is happening to inflation, what will be the penetration of EdTech over time बढ़ेगी, उसका infrastructure कैसे आएगा, वो सारी investments कब कैसे कौन करेगा, will be questions that will have to be. जो components हैं इसके, वो सारे बिल्कुल component बिल्कुल ठीक हैं जो होने चाहिए. I mean, the promise of EdTech is individualized learning. It is very the issue of access, possibility of democratization, improving quality, ensuring the support for teachers, etc. वो सारी चीजें जो हैं उसके आपको individual पायलट्स भी मिल जाते हैं, पेपर्स भी मिल जाते हैं, आपको प्रोजेक्ट्स भी मिल जाते हैं जिनमें ये सारी चीजें हुई हैं और अच्छी हुई हैं. और उसको अब सवाल ये है, इतने बड़े सिस्टम में जैसे पाकिस्तान है, उसको इकट्ठा कैसे करना है. पीपल फॉरगेट आई थिंक समटाइम्स कि कितना बड़ा सिस्टम हम बात कर रहे हैं. अभी भी 3 लाख से ज्यादा स्कूल, अभी भी हमारे 26 मिलियन बच्चे बाहर और 40 मिलियन बच्चे स्कूलों में जिनमें ज्यादातर अच्छी तालीम है. सो जस्ट द स्केल ऑफ मैनेजिंग समथिंग लाइक दिस is something to think about when we are starting programs, etc. And it's good कि इसमें वो by steps दिया हुआ है कि भाई पहले से बहुत सारी चीजें शुरू होंगी और उसके बाद आहिस्ता आहिस्ता हम उसको आगे लेके जाएंगे. एक चीज मैं जरूर कहूंगा कि एक प्रॉब्लम हमें जरूर होती है कि हम मुझे लगता है कि 0 to 100 बहुत तेजी से जाने की कोशिश करते हैं. देखें, बहुत सारे जो एलिमेंट्स जो जिनकी बात जुल्फिकार ने की वो सिस्टम में मौजूद हैं, इन द सेंस के हम सेंटर्स ऑफ एक्सीलेंस हमने बहुत बनाए हैं, मुख्तलिफ यूनिवर्सिटीज़ में बनाए हैं. हमने CPD भी बड़े अरसे से चल रहा है, पब्लिक सेक्टर में भी चल रहा है, कंटिन्यूड प्रोफेशनल टीचर्स की. और कहा जाता है कि टीचर ट्रेनिंग पे बहुत पैसा हमने ओवर द ईयर सारे प्रोविंसेस में खर्च किया है. I'm being told, I think I should speak more in English. But anyway, irrespective. Teacher training पे भी बहुत पैसे खर्च हुए हैं. Teacher satisfaction और उसकी जो उसके लिए जो कुछ हो सकता है उस पे भी there's been a lot of work that has been done and is being. Now the question, when we say by going EdTech, the quality will improve, it's the same people who are going to be doing those things as well. And so we have to carefully think about where the impotence for improved technology will come. Will it mean bringing things from outside, bringing people from outside? Because we have the same teachers, we have the same teacher trainers, we have the same support person for the CPD. Now, you bring in technology, that does not automatically mean that these people will change. And so how they utilize that technology needs to be thought through somehow. So if you're going to support the K1 teacher, I'll take one particular example. Zulfiqar has mentioned that you do more scripted work initially, and then you reduce the scripting over time. But we have no evidence that after the first or second year of teaching, teachers actually improve. Most of our empirical evidence says that they plateau and they become static. So how do we make sure that such transitions do happen? And these are empirical things that have to be dealt with in the system of working with people and doing it and then trying to figure out ways of going around it, etc. So it's not a question of कि ये गलत है, करना तो है ये, लेकिन वो कैसे करना है, वो करने से ही आएगा कि चाहे वो edtech के जरिए हो या directly हो, because I don't think we have had that much success in some of these things individually. I'll take the example also of something that Zulfiqar mentioned, is a center of, I think it's a lovely idea to have a few centers of excellence, or at least one or more, that actually focus on edtech, because there's a lot of work that needs to be done on research, on evaluation, and so on. But the problem is exactly that I mean, there are few examples of excellent centers of excellence. कहीं भी ये जो जिसकी आप बात कर रहे हैं अब ये edtech का, this requires multiple faculties to come together. Education, computer science, I think social sciences will have to come in, and also business studies will have to come in, because there's a lot of entrepreneurial angles and so on that you're looking at, right? For 4 faculties to work together in a center of excellence, in any university, maybe NUST has better management systems, etc. My experiences of universities, jitni bhi bahar aur yahan, that is not easy. It will require a lot of thinking and a lot of incentive structuring to make something like that work, even just a standalone center. और फिर आप उसके connections चाह रहे हैं सारे system से. So it's a lot of, I think it's a lovely idea to have this strategy as a focus, and then to start thinking about how the implementation is going to happen. What is the phasing required for it? How do we make bits and pieces of it start coming together and create those fora as well as institutional and organizational structures that will make that happen. I'll stop there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Faisal. Thank you very much. Now let me go to Mahmood. Mahmood has a varying background, a lawyer, an entrepreneur, has come from Singapore to shake up the education space in Pakistan, has a startup called Knowledge Platform. So Mahboob is probably the right man to come in here at this stage after Zulfiqar and Faisal. Mahboob, go ahead.
Thank you very much for including me. And Zulfiqar, thank you for your presentation, but more than your presentation, the thought you and the ministry have put together on creating this framework and on soliciting public and private sector inputs. And I think like Faisal, Dr. Faisal Bari said, I agree that most of the elements of what we would like to have are addressed. So it's a very comprehensive program. I'd like to focus a little bit on the math and then have 2-3 suggestions. So you had mentioned for $2 billion over 5 years. Now, if you look at all the students in Pakistan, including the out-of-school children, that comes to about $5 a student. If you look at all the students who are just enrolled in school and exclude the out-of-school children, that comes to $8 a student. And if you look at just the students in the government sector, including provinces, that comes to about $16 a student. So if you look at and it may be difficult to mobilize even $400 million, given that we are so cash strapped. So my issue is that we just don't have enough money to do much. I mean, $5 gets you a very low quality thumb drive. So, we can give a thumb drive to every child. I'm trivializing what the solution is, but there's just not enough money in this program. So there's a significant mismatch between the scope and ambitions of the program and the money. Now, when it comes to looking at money, there's 2 aspects you can do. One is to decrease the costs, and the second is to increase the money flowing into this. So from a cost decrease point of view, I think, Zulfiqar, the points you made about Pakistan, trying to build the industry in Pakistan, I mean, this has two benefits. One is that, you'll build a better industry that will have spin-offs internationally as well. I mean, for example, in our case now, we develop solutions in Pakistan, but 40% of our revenue is now coming from international. So it's a case where that it can happen. But if you look at the actual way the government has spent money, I mean, for example, Punjab province has spent a lot of money on McKinsey, on education. They spent a lot of money on Adam Smith, Cambridge International, KPK has spent a lot of money for Adam Smith. Recently, federal government got a Saudi learning management system. I don't know why, Pakistanis were not good enough. So one is that if you want to reduce the costs and also create a more responsive industry and incubate an industry, it's very important that whatever you do, a Pakistan first strategy must be there. That's my first point. The second point is that if you want to increase the amount of money, we should not be spending $400 million. We should be spending $4 billion on this. And even then, then you'll get to a level where you can actually do that. Now, is $4 billion possible? Yes, it is. If you capture the future revenue that comes from children who get a good education, for example, a Karachi laborer, day laborer, if you give somebody a tablet and for 12 years you assume that they can, after 12 years of learning, they make incrementally as much money as they make that a Karachi day laborer makes today, they'll earn back that investment, assuming it's about $250 a person per year. They'll earn it back 30 times in their lifetime. So I think the government has to think more about, not so much about spending money itself, but leveraging the money it has and leveraging its ability to legislate, whether it's Bitcoin, whether it's a new kind of currency, whether it's rules. For example, Jazz told me yesterday that the government doesn't allow you to disable SIM cards, disable NICs if somebody doesn't pay on a phone, right? So, there are various things government can put into place at almost no cost to unlock a lot more capital. I think also similarly, we're not engaging sufficiently creatively with our Pakistani overseas and Pakistanis who have wealth to bring in more money into education. And so I think probably the government's role, if I was in the government, I would say focus less on the solution of this kind of thing and focus more on how you can unlock vast amounts of capital to transform education. Third point, and it's kind of a more practical in sort of advancement of Faisal Saab's point, that in terms of increment of moving this along, all the things you mentioned are great, but how do we go forward? Either you can, I don't know if you can go forward with everything and succeed on such a big thing, or you go with, okay, we'll just go with teacher training. My recommendation would be that maybe we think about doing this only in one domain, for example, in the computer science domain. And we try to create a paradigm, make it successful with content, with teacher training, with certification standards, and so on. In one domain, make that strong, because we know that domain it's fast growing and we can unlock a lot of money by putting more people into that domain, and then move to other sectors. So the first thing is reduce costs, create your local industry. Secondly, think hugely about how you can create $4 billion of capital flowing into this, not 400 million. And third is take it step by step, with maybe one domain such as IT as the first one.
Thank you, Mahboob. Now let's go to Dr. Abid Rafique, an electrical engineer who's interested in schooling, has been running innovative schools for NUST and is planning further innovative schools. So Dr. Abid, please, over to you.
Thanks, Zulfiqar, for pitching this an excellent strategy for national digital innovation in education. And I'm sure that this is the first time actually you have actually bring all the different stakeholders here in that strategy. So like the government, yourself, the ministry, and the academia as well. So and of course the private sector. So instead of just taking input from the academia, if you bring them as a stakeholder, of course they will be much more productive. So let me actually highlight a couple of things in your strategy, and also highlight why the role of academia is important in this particular strategy. So let me introduce quickly myself. So I'm Dr. Abid, a faculty member at School of Electrical Engineering and Computer Science, NUST, and I'm head of Center of Excellence in K-12 education at NUST. Just to let you know, why the role of academia is important. So this is an understood fact that so development of a nation is actually synonymous to quality of education. So if you have to improve the quality, then you have to work on all 4 different pillars, right? So it's teaching, the teaching material, your teachers training, assessments, and then the school leaders. Okay, so there could be a lot of different best initiatives that have been taken. So you can get books from Oxford or Cambridge, or you can do a lot of different edtech interventions. But the part solutions don't work. That's what the people that Faisal was pointing to earlier, that there are a lot of centers that have been established before. There are a lot of efforts that have been gone before, and we haven't seen the real impact, right? So in my opinion, so if you're just focusing on one aspect, like improving the teaching material or just the teachers training, so you have to do a holistic approach, right? So you have to work on all these 4 pillars, and also not only working on 4 pillars, you have to improve the quality of all these 4. You have to improve the quality of the teaching material, you have to improve the quality of teachers training, and you have to improve the quality of your assessments as well. Okay, so we believe that it's not a single organization like any edtech company or a not-profit organization, or even for that matter government itself can tackle all these challenges, right? So it has to be, because it's a multidisciplinary thing, and if you have to improve the quality, you need educationists, you need behavioral specialists, cognitive scientists, you need, of course, business and entrepreneurship for creating this edtech, and you need, of course, the technology people, right? So since this is a very multidisciplinary team, so definitely the role of academia comes into play over here, and it has to be a university-led research team working on all these aspects. So why NUST? Why NUST is suitable for this, and as an academic player, and would like to partner in this strategy, because NUST is a technology-focused university, and because this strategy is also more into using digital innovation and edtech into the education. So NUST is rightly placed because we have the School of Electrical Engineering and Computer Science, we have the Humanities and Social Sciences schools, S3H, and School of Natural Sciences, the Business School, and then more importantly, we have National Science and Technology Park, where we can actually incubate these edtech startups, multiple edtech startups. So definitely the role of academia, what we have identified rightly, is there, and we have to work in tandem with the federal government, and of course in multiple ways. Okay, so another question that came up, whether edtech is the right solution to actually improve the quality of education. So I also totally agree with Faisal as well, that edtech is not the solution, but it can complement, of course, the efforts. One of the important thing where edtech can play a really great part is improving the quality of teachers. We have a backlog of around 2.5 million teachers, and they are ill-trained and not that motivated. So we have to actually, we can't train them face to face, of course, and edtech, and of course this leveraging technology is the only way forward for training. And so we have already done a lot of efforts in this direction here at NUST, and Just to give you a little glimpse, so we have been working on producing our own books. We believe that we cannot just take the foreign books like from Oxford or Cambridge and just use it in our own context. So we have to develop the books very local and not only local but very also applied very at a very hyper local as well. I mean, what works for an Islamabad might not work for Mardan or for that matter Central Punjab, right? So we have to devise solutions for the local context, and then for not only for books but also for teachers training. So we have identified, I mean, different teachers training gaps in different regions. For that, let's say we have figured out that if once we do some sessions in GB, the quality of English in that area was really good. I mean, but if we move on to Central Punjab and they don't have, I mean, not only having problem in their teaching methodology, but their English itself is really bad. So we have to devise different teaching training curriculum for different regions, right? So this is the role of the academia that I would like to highlight over here. Thanks. If I can take questions if you have any.
You folks, raise your hands if you have questions. Abbas Rashid, are you there from Sahi? Would you like to say something? I saw Abbas Rashid. Sahi, do you want to say anything, Abbas Saab?
Ji, thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me to this August gathering. Some considerable food for thought here. Let me just say so that I keep it short and other people have an opportunity. I agree with a lot of what Dr. Faisal Bari had to say, but let me just add also, Joe, I think Mahboob Saab ne baat ki thi, that this is really a very ambitious plan, और इसमें जो अक्सर बातें हैं वो बिल्कुल make a lot of sense, a lot of the proposals. Lekin I think there is a need to prioritize. My own sense is, yes, I would say among the areas that I would focus on and with the use of IT is teacher training, yes, but also I think और इसकी निशानदेही की गई है, nutrition. I think is very important. The government's own figures refer to 40% of children being stunted or malnourished, and that's really completely, to me, a mind-boggling figure. And what it does to children's cognitive ability and the long-term consequences is just unbelievable that we are putting up with this situation. I think this is really, if we are going to go for an education emergency, this is the real emergency. We can deal with other stuff later on. The other thing, which is again foundational, is that of second language learning, and I think IT there can be a big help. So the whole question of devising a language policy that makes sense. We absolutely need children to be proficient in English, but that doesn't mean that you start with English on day one with a child who's coming from a village in DG Khan. So I think some of those things, at least if one is pushed to sort of identifying three, to me, these are the three key areas. Thank you.
So anybody wants to raise questions, the button is there. Please raise your hands and we'll call you. But while we are waiting for people to ask questions, let me just say, Zulfiqar and you people, most of you people, education specialists, I think the first thing that we have to recognize is that we've had many education policies and we've failed. We've tried many things, Danish schools, education foundations, voucher systems, teacher training. Teacher training has been done since I was a baby. Because I remember my chachi to be was being trained when I was 2 years old. And teacher training has been tried since then. Babarli's famous teacher training school is there and we've achieved nothing. But more importantly, HEC has failed miserably. Universities are miserable failure. You want to include universities? I don't think so. Universities are total failures. We've looked at them. They don't even have professors. They're professorless universities. They're housing colonies. They're building blocks. Then you talk about localization, books. I don't agree with localization. We've had localization in cars. What have we achieved? So quite frankly, think about it. What I found missing in all this was the students. Where are the students in all this? They seem to be automatons that we are dumping things on. Why would they want to take this education? Look at the incentive system in Pakistan. Everything depends on whether you take the civil service exam, or it's better if you go into the army to begin with. And thereafter, it's better to become a lawyer, because we just have a penchant for the law. We mistreat it, we abuse it. But yes, anybody who can talk fast can become a good lawyer. So where is the incentive for people to do IT? Okay, you can talk about freelancing, but I suggest that freelancing is a flash in the pan. It's not going to be there forever. Probably Food Panda will last longer than freelancing. So I think these issues need to be confronted. Where are the incentive systems? Where are past failures? Academics has failed. I interview students and I find they're miserable. They don't know anything. And the research coming out of HEC is terrible. They have no professors. And you want to involve academia. Why should it be led by academia? Why should it be a centralized system? Why is it not a decentralized system which can kind of innovate and operate on its own? Why do you need to do RCTs on everything? I think that's, to me, it's bizarre. Anyways, folks, if nobody wants to ask a question, I'll turn to Zulfiqar and others. Meanwhile, you can raise your hand. Zulfiqar, go ahead.
I think some people have raised their hands, but I'll sort of answer your last question. Okay. Number one, yes, we can give up and we can say we haven't been able to do this in 70 years. So let's not even try. I don't believe in that. So I'm not a proponent of that. As far as students are concerned, this strategy is...
I'm not saying don't try. I'm saying recognize the failures. I'm not saying don't try. Yeah, please try. Where are the failures? HEC has failed. Do you recognize that?
Yes.
Then why don't we disband HEC? The PIDE and these educational institutions, the research institutions have failed. Why don't we disband them? Why don't we move on?
So we believe we have an answer. We believe that the part of the answer is imposing a regime of accountability and transparency into this. That's what we are doing. I mean, to answer your question is, are the principals today sufficiently accountable for the performance in their schools? No. Do they have incentives or motivation for leading the pack in this?
I don't think they even have the responsibility, Zulfiqar. They don't even have the responsibility.
So what we are trying to do is to change that, right? Whether we succeed or not is obviously something to be seen. But at least we are, for the first time, trying to address these deficiencies. So everything that you said, I believe you mentioned 3 things, and all of them have been addressed in the strategy. Student first. I think if you saw the emphasis on what World Economic Forum says are the required characteristics and traits to be successful, and productive citizens, we are starting from that, and with the Center of Excellence, we'll expand those things and contextualize those things. So I think there is probably a lot more emphasis on leveraging the individualized learning that is facilitated by EdTech and using that for making it more student-oriented learning than was ever the case in the last 70 years. So that's your first point. The second point is universities are bad. Universities should be improved. I mean, that is an entirely different argument, but recognizing the lack of consistency of competency and capability, we are not going to get into that argument, but we are just going to work with the best, right? So we are going to work with the best, and then we are going to have a center of excellence where we are going to give financial incentives and opportunity for the best brains to kind of migrate there, convalesce there, and focus on this particular project to make it successful. I mean, you remember Manhattan Project, you remember Oppenheimer getting all the best brains together. That's why it worked. It didn't work because there was nothing that was ever done in the deserts of Mojave Desert for 70 years or 100 years or 200 years. But, in 4 or 5 years, those people were willing to achieve great results. I believe, based on my experience so far with my startup, and which was a global startup, and that's just one experience. But it's my own personal belief, and I think that if you are going to be successful with anything, you are going to be successful in 5 years. Otherwise, you fail, right? So this strategy is written with that intention. And to answer the other question of, okay, a lot of people here have proposed, and my friend Mahboob has proposed here that we should focus on one thing, perhaps, and get it right, and then not focus on the other elements. Unfortunately, my research shows, and I'm, again, this is something that I'm willing to discuss with academia and deliberate on it, that unless you focus on all the 4 elements at the same time, you don't get that, like the strategy says that you need to get to a certain level of performance and then build on it. You don't get that level of performance if you just focus on teacher training and don't focus on content, or don't focus on curriculum, or don't focus on the other elements, such as focusing on the nutrition, transportation needs of the students, or whatever. So I think a better strategy, and this is the one that is proposed, is that you first focus on one region, on one area, build a model that works, get it cost efficient, and then scale it to the entire country. This is a much better model than just focusing on one element of it. But again, all of these things, the idea of engaging such experienced resources as present here is to share this proposal and to refine it. Thank you.
Anybody else wants to say something on the panel?
I would like to actually add over here. So coming back to your question, so let's say what you're saying, that HSC has miserably failed. So I mean, of course, that's we are talking about K-12 over here. So that's the reason over here. If it is failing over here, it's to mean that there's some problem, some lies somewhere else. We need to focus on the primary and anywhere preschool as well. So that's what we are trying to do over here. And also, I mean, let's say, things need to be evolved, right? So if we, let's say, travel somewhere in a particular direction, and if we lost the direction, we have to correct the direction instead of just starting from the beginning, right? So that's what we are trying to do. If the universities or the EdTech have failed in the past, actually we have to learn from the past, and then we have to actually devise new strategies. And I think this NDIES, what Zulfiqar has proposed, is try to actually bring an accountability mechanism into all of them. So even if the EdTechs, they will be given some project, they will be actually totally accountable, and they will be actually paid as per the instead of output, they will be paid as per outcome and impact as well. So outcome is whether these technologies, they have been actually applied into the classroom or not, and impact is where actually they actually measure whether the students gets the benefit or not. So I think it's a very comprehensive strategy. There will be some friction along the way. I totally agree with you, Dr. Nadeem, but I think we need to actually make corrections along the way, and doesn't have to be static. It has to be alive, right?
बिल्कुल ठीक कह रहे हैं, but quite frankly, what I didn't see was any accountability of the past. I would love to see कि जी पहले कुछ बंद तो कर रहे हैं, क्योंकि इतने एजुकेशन के दायरे बने हुए हैं. मैं जहां जाता हूं वहां मुझे एजुकेशन का साइन नजर आता है. फेडरल डायरेक्टर ऑफ एजुकेशन, दिस डायरेक्टर ऑफ एजुकेशन, दिस Pakistan Institute of Education. We got so many educational institutions. We got so many cars with education on them. We got so many buildings with education on them. I want to see the results first. ये कह देना accountability आगे आएगी, भाई पीछे क्यों नहीं आएगी? Plagiarism जो हमारी यूनिवर्सिटीज में हो रही है, आप कह रहे हैं यूनिवर्सिटीज को ट्रस्ट करना है with plagiarism? Anybody else जी, or shall we go ahead? नहीं तो let's go ahead. जी, सादिया राना.
Nadeem, thank you for opening up the mic. I think it has been closed and you have not seen the hands for the longest of time. If you have stopped playing with those, with those airplanes, paper airplanes, he would have seen us. I have heard, and I am actually very surprised with us as Pakistanis that we never get faced with our own failures, and we keep coming back with mega plans, which are a repetition of what has happened in the past. We have never faltered on plans. Our plans have been one of the best. But like many of our panelists and many others might also feel, we have failed in the implementation, in the governance, in the accountability portion, and we fail to rationalize the existing with what we want to do now and move forward. I am not saying that we are hopeful is a bad way to go about it. The plan that has been put forward is very comprehensive and has tried to actually put in everything under the sun. And I think that's what I think Mahboob Saab wanted to say, that we should perhaps try to take things one at a time, not one teacher training at one time, but, take things a bit slowly. There were a couple of things that I thought made immense sense. Rationalization of structures, it's not there. Accountability is not there. We have failed to actually collaborate among departments for anything. Leave aside, we want to have silos of excellence, and collaboration is the key. And what you put in that plan demands a lot of collaboration. I haven't seen two offices next to each other collaborate on anything in my nearly 45 years of service in government and private sector. Also, Abbas made a very good point about what is more important for us in this country and what is the context. I totally agree. AI and digital media is the way to go. But unfortunately, in a country where people do not have the life skills to live healthily or economically within the same resources that they have, resources are not going to improve. We all know that. It would be really taking us down the fool's paradise if we said economics was going to get better. Until economics gets better, you do not have a choice to work around, the massive plans. We have had too many failures with some great plans that we have put forward, but we never achieved anything. So I think before we commit so much of our future generations' money into this scheme, we really need to, I think, Nadeem said that. I think Abbas made some very good points. Faisal Bari would top on, spoke like a academician, and he really did a good assessment. I do think we need to step back, rethink what do we really want to do in education and what sort of education is it that we need. We have failed to use social media. We have failed to use iPhones that all of us carry and our illiterate population carries, and we have not been able to entice them to use it for their work or their education or their development. And I think putting in a high edtech policy, which only a few will benefit from, is not going to take us far. So I am sorry if I sound like a...
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. देखिए, यहाँ पहले speakers बोलते हैं, फिर लोग बोलते हैं. Can't bring in people in the middle of speakers that we've invited. So please don't mind if I try and take you in after the speakers speak, because that's the normal convention that we have here. Sadia Rana, would you like to speak? Can Sadia Rana unmute herself? She can't. Then let's go to Nadia. Nadia Tahir, bole.
Thank you very much. मेरा 2-3 comments हैं. The first one is we need to have some assessment where we are right now. It's ambitious to say that we could be in the top 50 systems. Before that, I think that there has to be some assessment that where we are right now. There has to be some white paper or something like this which can tell us what are the problems and which is the weakest link in the system. The second, quality. When you speak about quality, it is conformity of the standard or it is something beyond. This tick mark approach, where we see that yes, we have teachers training, yes, we have online readiness available, yes, we have technology and scripted lessons planned there, and this will bring quality. I'm sorry. I think that we have to create a culture in which people can admire and can actually see that what really we are producing. Thirdly, that the mathematics part of it, that $5 students can afford to pay or $8 we are spending on it. I think out-of-pocket expenditure on education is there, and people in their individual capacities are willing to pay. So we think that this 2 billion only government is financing and government is doing. I think that this approach has to be considered or reconsidered again. And lastly, about the Center of Excellence and the teachers training thing, unfortunately, we've been miserably fail in all these dimensions. Our Center of Excellence, as well as wherever, whatever we are producing as a teacher quality, when I see the assessments, is the weakest link, and the teachers are unable to assess students properly. They do not have this capacity at all to assess the students properly. So I am very skeptical that with this fancy approach that the technology would be the medium of education and it will bring a miracle overnight will not work, and it will not solve the problem of 250 million students who 25 million students who are out of school. Thank you very much.
But I think what you said, Nadia, which is very operative, is a culture and a demand for education. When I find that the returns to education, which we economists estimate, are the highest to the army, the second highest to the civil service, third highest to lawyers and judges, then what are kids going to study for? They're just studying for these three things. And those three things are totally unrelated to technology, and they're totally unrelated to the real world. So quite frankly, because the incentive system is such that we play with those. Ji Sadia Rana, are you going to speak or not? And Faisal Malik, Fiza whatever, Fiza Batul, I think.
Assalamualaikum. So my question is that how to ensure the implementation of this process, and secondly that there are there's not equal हर कोई हर इलाका इक्वल नहीं है. लाइक फॉर एग्जांपल अगर हम ले बलूचिस्तान का जो रिमोट एरिया है उसमें बहुत से लोगों को they are unable to receive the basic human needs. So how can they किस तरह से उन्हें इस तरह डिजिटल लर्निंग में उतारा जा सकता है और किस तरह इम्प्लीमेंट किया जा सकता है, बिकॉज व्हेन एनी पॉलिसी इज मेड, ये सिर्फ नहीं है कि वो फेडरल के लिए बनाया जाए और रिमोट एरियाज को भी फोकस में लाना चाहिए. सो दिस इज माय क्वेश्चन. थैंक यू.
भी इसका बड़ा सिंपल जवाब दे देता हूं, उनको कहें मूव करें भाई. अगर रिमोट एरिया में बैठना है तो उसकी अय्याशी के पैसे हम लोग तो नहीं देंगे ना, वो मूव करें. जी शौकत साहब, सादिया राना, आई डोंट थिंक यू कैन स्पीक. शौकत साहब बोलिए.
थैंक यू. माय क्वेश्चन इज टू डॉक्टर फैसल बारी. I just want to ask, in the context of out-of-school children and adult literacy, what is the potential of something like one teacher, one student, and perhaps some NGO can take up this initiative of teaching people in remote areas and so on, and giving them basic education like read, write, and do basic maths. And so what's the potential of this? And some NGO can take up this on a voluntary basis. People can teach or can teach for a small stipend. Thank you.
सब मुझे समझ नहीं आती कि माइग्रेशन जो डेवलपमेंट इकोनॉमिक्स का कोर है, माइग्रेशन रिमोट एरियाज में मुझे समझ नहीं आती. आप लोग सब रिमोट एरिया से क्या प्रॉब्लम है? इफ़त वफा माइग्रेट करें, माइग्रेट नहीं करते तो फिर बैठे एंजॉय करें सनलाइट और वो चीजें. जी
माइग्रेट के अलावा ये अर्बन एरियाज में भी जो आउट ऑफ स्कूल है
उनकी सब माइग्रेट करें. खत्म होगी बात. जी इफ़त साहब बोलिए. जी लेट्स स्टार्ट नाउ विद अपना महबूब who hasn't spoken, then Faisal, then Abid, and then last word to Zulfiqar.
Gee, thank you. A lot of very interesting questions. I think the big takeaway was, there seem to be two types of questions. One is questions that either say don't, spend more on nutrition, or is education technology not effective? In other words, the whole thrust should be elsewhere, or at least questioning whether the thrust should be so much on education technology. And I think those are very good questions. And then a lot of the other questions were more about, how are we going to implement this and make sure that it happens? And then there were some orthogonal questions, like Nadeem Hussein's question as to whether we should abolish HEC, which I agreed with Faisal, with Zulfiqar was not really part of this discussion. But in terms of the second point, I just want to, highlight that when you look at the role of the federal government, right, and understand both its role and its limitations, because when you look at it as the federal government as a deliverer of education, the federal government is only working on less than 1/4 of 1% of the schools in the country. So to be honest, and it's done a very good job, actually, the federal FDE schools, we worked extensively in them for 4-5 years. And I would say they're really good schools. For the government level, there are no better schools in Pakistan than the FDE schools. And they're also more receptive now because a lot of change has gone through and so on. But there are other roles that the government has. For example, a lot of foreign money comes in first to the federal government, so they get to implement that. Secondly, they get to set the curriculum, and others usually just follow that and so on. So I think one has to be cognizant that what you're doing as a deliverer of education, to what extent is that scalable? Because a lot of other problems come up, like we talked about distances in Balochistan and so on. So I think as we think through implementation and priorities, I hope we also take into account cognizance of the role, limitations, and reality of the federal government in this very complex and large system.
I think Nadeem asked me to speak after.
Thank you.
Mahboob. So एक तो इदरीस साहब का सवाल था कि I think it seems to me, so as I said, I think EdTech is very much part of the solution, but there are others also. 3-4 चीजें जो इस वक्त मुझे समझ आ रही हैं कि शायद हम जहाँ पे हमें चीजें थोड़ी बहुत चेंज कर सकते हैं. I think प्राइवेट पब्लिक पार्टनरशिप्स में स्पेस काफ़ी ज़्यादा है जो इस्तेमाल हो सकती है. सेकेंडली ALPs और इनफॉर्मल एजुकेशन जिसका इदरीस साहब आपने जिक्र किया, बिल्कुल इसमें काफ़ी ज़्यादा स्कोप है कि ये इसको यूज़ किया जा सके फॉर बेसिक लिटरेसी एंड न्यूमरेसी. गवर्नमेंट को बड़े कुछ सवाल जो हैं वो सोचने पड़ेंगे उनके बारे में कि should government focus more on where markets are not there, where schools are not there उन इलाकों में, and should governments by using private-public partnership move out of primary, यानी प्राइमरी में पब्लिक प्राइवेट के जरिए एक्सपैंड करें क्योंकि प्राइमरी अब प्राइवेट सेक्टर में भी बहुत बड़ा है, लेकिन मिडिल और हाई स्कूल पे ज़्यादा फोकस करें खुद, क्योंकि वहाँ पे अभी भी प्राइवेट सेक्टर को भी बड़े मसले हैं और पब्लिक सेक्टर में भी स्कूल हमारे पास बहुत कम है. वहाँ जेंडर सेग्रीगेशन भी बहुत जगह आ जाती है तो स्कूल और कम हो जाते हैं. सो बहुत सारी ऐसी स्ट्रैटेजीज हैं जो हमें सोचनी पड़ेंगी और उन सब से आई थिंक सकते हैं. सो विच इज़ व्हाई आई से कि जिस तरह हम इधर सोच रहे हैं एडटेक के नीचे सारा कुछ इकट्ठा करके एटलीस्ट, एंड दिस इज व्हाट आई सेड, जुल्फिकार साहब ने अच्छा किया, he has brought all of the picture together so that we know what the issues are and what the sub parts are. हमारा नॉन एडटेक सेक्टर है, वहाँ पे भी बहुत ज़्यादा ज़रूरत है कि ऐसी ही थिंकिंग करके we think about कहाँ पे we can have a large impact and push forward in a big way.
जी मुझे कहा गया था इसके बाद बोलने के लिए. तो लेट मी जस्ट एक्चुअली तो एक दो चीज़ें जो कि महज पार्टिसिपेंट्स ने जो ना वो कही हैं और नदीम साहब आपकी तरफ से भी आया था कि भाई यूनिवर्सिटीज़ जो है ना वो ऑलरेडी मिजरेबली फेल्ड रही हैं इससे पहले. तो वो आपकी बात बिल्कुल ठीक है. आई मीन पीपल ट्राई टू गेट BEd एंड MEd एंड जस्ट फॉर द सेक ऑफ जो ना जॉब उनको मिल जाए. So what we are doing differently at university, and I would like to invite you all the participants at NUST, and we would like to give you a detailed briefing. So how we are going to do differently this way, and I would like to get your suggestions and constructive and also feedback as well. So we might have a different come up with a different plan, but our focus is now more on a reformist kind of thing. So just starting from the प्री स्कूल से लेके कि हम फिर आउट कर रहे हैं यार कि आप हर चीज़ के ऊपर तो फोकस नहीं कर सकते, तो हर डिफरेंट चाइल्ड की डिफरेंट स्टेजेस के ऊपर हमें किस चीज़ पे फोकस करना है. तो लेट्स से अगर हम कहते हैं यार प्री स्कूल के ऊपर हमने उसकी इमोशनल डेवलपमेंट के ऊपर फोकस करना है, तो हमने प्री स्कूल के लिए फिर करिकुलम या वो चीज़ हम उस हिसाब से डिज़ाइन कर रहे हैं. लेट्स से हम कहते हैं कि यार आपकी अर्ली प्राइमरी है, उसमें हमने उसकी लैंग्वेज ट्रांजिशनिंग के ऊपर फोकस करना है और उसकी लॉजिकल उसके ऊपर करना है, तो फिर हम सिर्फ लैंग्वेज और मैथ के ऊपर फोकस कर रहे होंगे उस पर्टिकुलर ईयर्स में, इंस्टेड कि हम उसको फिर साइंस से पढ़ा रहे हैं, हम उसको फिर पता नहीं कहाँ से क्या डिफरेंट चीजें पढ़ा रहे हैं। फिर अगर हम लेट्स से 7 years एंड ऑनवर्ड है, तो फिर हमारा ऑल टुगेदर एक डिफरेंट चीज है। तो इट्स अ वेरी कॉम्प्रिहेंसिव जो हमने प्लान वगैरह बनाया हुआ है, और उसके मुताबिक हमने ऑलरेडी एग्जीक्यूशन भी स्टार्ट कर दिया। वुड लाइक टू गिव यू अ डेमोन्स्ट्रेशन एंड फेडरल कैपिटल एरिया, जहाँ पे हमने ऑलरेडी कुछ जो है ना स्कूलों के अंदर इंटरवेंशंस की हैं। कमिंग बैक टू कि भाई आपके 240 मिलियन की पॉपुलेशन है और आप इस चीज़ को स्केलेबल कैसे करेंगे या इसको कैसे करेंगे, तो बिल्कुल जिस तरह चाइना ने शंघाई में किया, डिस्ट्रिक्ट के अंदर किया, वी वुड लाइक टू हैव फेडरल एज द आप भी कह सकते हैं कि आइलैंड ऑफ एक्सीलेंस। हम फेडरल क्योंकि छोटा रीजन है और इसके अंदर अर्बन और रूरल दोनों तरह का मिक्स हमारे पास मौजूद है, मतलब अर्बन सेंटर के अंदर भी स्कूल हैं और इवन जो रूरल जो आपका तनोल और सिहाला और उस साइड के ऊपर भी स्कूल्स हैं। तो हम दोनों तरह के स्कूल्स को जो है ना यहाँ पे पहले एड्रेस करें, इस पूरे सिस्टम को यहाँ पे इम्प्लीमेंट करें, उसकी एफिकेसी को जांचें और उसके बाद फिर इसको ऑफ कोर्स बाकी पूरे नेशन में जो है इसको स्प्रेड आउट करें। तो मुझे लगता है कि इटरेशन होगी, मैं ये नहीं कहता यार फर्स्ट टाइम हम कहेंगे और इसको जो है ना इम्प्लीमेंट करने की कोशिश करेंगे तो ये बिल्कुल परफेक्ट जो है ना वो काम करेगा। देयर विल बी मल्टीपल इटरेशन और इसी तरीके से चीजें मेरे ख्याल से इंप्रूव होती हैं। So we would like your constructive feedback on this, and I would like on behalf of NUST, I would like to invite you at NUST और फिर आपको बताएं कि यार हम as a NUST जो है ना क्या डिफरेंटली इस दफा इंशाल्लाह कर रहे होंगे। तो थैंक यू।
बिल्कुल ठीक जी। जुल्फिकार साहब
जी, अस्सलाम वालेकुम। अच्छा, मैं 2-3 चीजों को एड्रेस करना चाहता हूँ अपने क्लोजिंग रिमार्क्स में। पहले तो ये बात है कि भाई देखें, हम सारे मुल्क के प्रॉब्लम्स एक इनिशिएटिव में सॉल्व नहीं कर सकते, ठीक है ना। तो जो भी हमारे इल्स हैं 70 ईयर्स के, वो एक सेपरेट डिबेट है, उनको बिल्कुल हमें सॉल्व करना चाहिए। लेकिन को बहाना बना के अगर एक इनिशिएटिव आया, मेरा ख्याल है उसको वो नहीं करना चाहिए, पिनलाइज नहीं करना चाहिए, और ये नहीं कहना चाहिए कि जब तक वो मसले सॉल्व नहीं होंगे इस मसले पे हम फोकस नहीं करेंगे, बिकॉज इस तरह की लोग बातें करते हैं, लेकिन आई थिंक दैट इज काउंटर प्रोडक्टिव एंड दैट्स नॉट वेयर वी आर। सेकंड थिंग इज कि ये बात कहना कि भाई लेट्स स्टेप बैक एंड स्टार्ट लुक एट दिस फ्रॉम द होल विजन। आप कम से कम हमारे 5 साल के एफर्ट को देखें तो सही। हमने काफी मेहनत की है और होपफुली लॉट ऑफ दीज इश्यूज दैट यू हैव ब्रॉट अप have been done, and spending another 5 years in planning, just because we forgot to bring you on board during the planning process, I think is unfair. ठीक है ना। तो आप इसको critique करें from the point of view that it's a framework that 5 years of effort has gone
I think
into.
we're all approaching it that way. Nobody's critiquing it generously.
अच्छा,
वो हम तो ये just saying कि जी पिछले failures जो है इतने हैं कि we are skeptical of a new initiative. That's all.
ठीक है। थर्ड थिंग इज के वेयर वी आर और वन शुड बी, हमने बेसलाइन इस प्रोजेक्ट स्ट्रेटेजी के अंदर डाला है, मैंने आपको एक स्लाइड में दिखाया भी था। हमारा सबसे मेजर प्रॉब्लम है प्राइमरी लेवल पे फाउंडेशन लर्निंग और सेकंड लैंग्वेज प्रॉब्लम, राइट। उनको हम एड्रेस कर रहे हैं, वो एड्रेस करेंगे तो हमें पता चलेगा कि भाई हमारी फाउंडेशनल लर्निंग इंप्रूव हुई है। एवरीथिंग इज बिल्ट ऑन टॉप ऑफ फाउंडेशन लर्निंग, ठीक है ना। तो ये जो गोल है, यस इट इज एम्बिशियस दैट वी विल break into the top 50 countries of the world in 10 years. This is only possible if the political will is there, if everybody gets behind the strategy. Otherwise, the 10 years will slip into 15 years or 20 years and all of that, right? I mean, these are things जो कि possible की एक picture होती है, practically implementation की will and motivation matters. As far as will and motivation and incentives are concerned, मुझे टाइम नहीं था इधर इन स्लाइड्स में उनको एक्सप्रेस करने के लिए, लेकिन एट ऑल लेवल्स जहां जहां हमें जरूरत है परफॉर्मेंस की, हमने इंसेंटिव भी दिए हैं पॉलिसी चेंजेस में। उनकी प्रमोशन और उनकी एक्टिविटीज विल बी लिंक्ड टुवर्ड सपोर्ट ऑफ द स्ट्रेटजी। दे विल गेट बोनसेस, जिस तरह के अदर कंट्रीज में होता है कि अगर आप ये गोल्स, परफॉर्मेंस के गोल्स मीट करें तो एट द एंड ऑफ द ईयर यू गेट 1 salary more as a bonus, or you have to have certain levels of competency certifications before you can be considered for promotion. Or agar aapka, if you are a principal in a head position, so you are supposed to maintain a certain level of performance, or you have yearly targets associated to it. If you don't meet them, then you are subject to be replaced, right? So all of those measures that we have learned how to manage through failures and successes in Silicon Valley have been applied into this framework, ठीक है ना। और probably क्योंकि मैं आईटी से आया हूं, तो आईटी में तो आप फेल करते हैं, फिर फेल करते हैं, फिर फेल करते हैं और फिर सक्सीड करते हैं। दिस इज नॉर्मल इन एनी प्रोडक्ट डेवलपमेंट। तो हमारा वही एटीट्यूड है कि हम शुरू करें We believe we have a good plan. We don't think it is a perfect plan. We don't think that we will not have to revise it as we get into it from our learning. But this is what happens when you develop products, right? Ford ki motor T jo bani thi, it was very different than what he actually put on the garage. Last point, actually second last point, is ke remote area ka point. Now, this has nothing to do with education, but my own personal opinion is that power centers of today are peripheral centers of power tomorrow. If you look at history, right? So ये जो है ना, चाहे आप टेक्सला यूनिवर्सिटी का एग्जांपल लें, अगर आपने किसी भी रिमोट एरिया को सक्सेसफुल बनाना है और पावर सेंटर की कंपटीशन में डालना है a century later, तो आप वहां पर अच्छी यूनिवर्सिटी बनाएं and make sure that Karakoram University becomes like the Harvard of that area. और फिर आप देखें in 50 years, 40 years, आपका जो पावर सेंटर है इस्लामाबाद से शायद स्कर्दू शिफ्ट हो जाए. This is all possible. So आप जो है ना, क्या कहते हैं, don't get discouraged, and I don't think you need to move away from the remote center, from the remote areas. You just need to build it so that becomes a viable enterprise university. जिससे बनेगी तो आपका बिजनेस जनरेट होगी, इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर इंप्रूव होगा, ये चीजें शऊर में आएंगी तो आगे बढ़ेंगी. Anyway, I don't mean to lecture you, but this is also something. Lastly, I urge that अगर आपको ये strategy के principles पसंद हैं तो please support it. Please advocate it, because ultimately, like I said, its implementation is going to be gated by political will and financial support. Thank you very much.
Ji. Faisal Saab, let me, before closing, turn back to you, because I'd like to find out, you know, मैंने आपको सवाल chat में भेजे हैं, कि is there really a demand for education in this country? By that I mean कि returns to education जो मैं देखता हूँ, वो तो इतने अच्छे नहीं है. तो अगर रिटर्न्स टू एजुकेशन अच्छे नहीं है, एक चपरासी की पोजीशन होती है, उसके लिए एमफिल्स अप्लाई करते हैं, तो is there a demand for education, and what kind of demand is there? Because one thing that we don't focus on is the demand for education, and we have this Orientalist vision जो मैंने आपको भेजा है कि we have to raise children in our own vision. Is that the education model? You are the major expert in education. आपका क्या model है? How would you advise us to look at education?
हाँ जी नदीम, नहीं, the demand for education is very very strong. आप इससे अंदाजा कीजिए कि लोग, people, when they find that the public schools are not good, they pay for getting their children educated, and it means usually stopping other expenditures, चाहे वो health के हों या कोई और चीज़ों के, जिसे लिटरली लोग कहते हैं कि पेट काट के वो अपने बच्चों को तालीम दिलवा रहे हैं. तो वो डिमांड ये है एजुकेशन की. मैंने तो कभी कहीं किसी पेरेंट को ये कहते ही देखा, और मैं तकरीबन पाकिस्तान के तमाम हिस्सों में जा चुका हूँ, काम कर चुका हूँ, कि मैंने अपने बच्चे या बच्ची को तालीम नहीं देनी. वो हालात ऐसे होते हैं कि या अपॉर्चुनिटी कॉस्ट की वजह से, या ट्रांसपोर्टेशन कॉस्ट, या और वजहों से, या स्कूल नहीं, या बहुत सारी और चीज़ें जिसकी वजह से तालीम देना मुश्किल हो जाता है और बहुत सारे बच्चे नहीं तालीम में होते. एक तो इसका जवाब ये है कि डिमांड उस लिहाज से तो बहुत है. अब वो रिटर्न्स टू एजुकेशन वाली बात आपकी बिल्कुल ठीक है कि रिटर्न्स बहुत देर में आते हैं, बहुत लिमिटेड चीज़ों के हैं. उसके बारे में हमें सोचना पड़ेगा कि किस तरह हम लेबर मार्केट्स को चेंज करें. मसलन ख़वातीन की लेबर मार्केट डेवलप करने की, उनकी पार्टिसिपेशन बढ़ाने की, और बहुत सारी चीज़ों की ज़रूरत है, बिल्कुल है. लेकिन वो अभी तक तो डिमांड पे कोई मैंने उसका इफेक्ट नहीं देखा. दूसरी चीज़, इसका जवाब ये है कि इर्रिस्पेक्टिव ऑफ डिमांड, बेसिक जो लिटरेसी, न्यूमरेसी चीज़ें हैं, वो बहुत सारी दुनिया अब ये कह रही है, और मैं, आप ज़रूरी नहीं कि आप इससे एग्री करें, कि वो राइट टू लाइफ का हिस्सा हैं. अब आपको बेसिक लिटरेसी, न्यूमरेसी वगैरह के बगैर जो है ज़िंदगी गुजारना इस मॉडर्न सोसाइटी में मुश्किल हो गया है, बहुत मुश्किल हो गया है. सो दैट इज़ वाई आर्टिकल्स लाइक 25A, और जो आप SDGs में भी देखते हैं और बाकी जगहों पे भी वो ऐड किए जा रहे हैं कि उसके बगैर बच्चों को, इट्स लाइक जैसे हम इनॉक्यूलेशंस करते हैं कि डिमांड है या नहीं, उसका एक एस्पेक्ट इनॉक्यूलेशन का ये है कि करनी पड़ेगी, क्योंकि वो बच्चे के लिए भी खतरनाक है और बच्चे के इर्द गिर्द जो दूसरे बच्चे हैं उनके लिए भी खतरनाक है. दैट्स अ पब्लिक गुड एलिमेंट ऑफ इट. तो मेरे ख्याल में तो डिमांड है, बहुत है, लेकिन हम सही तरह से उसको प्रोवाइड फॉर नहीं कर पा रहे, क्योंकि ज़्यादातर पेरेंट्स की परचेजिंग पावर लिमिटेड है. और दूसरी साइड पे जहाँ मसला है वो है कि गवर्नमेंट उस डिमांड के, सो समहाउ वो डिमांड एग्रीगेशन नहीं हो रही कि गवर्नमेंट प्रायोरिटी चेंज हो सके टुवर्ड्स वॉट लोगों ने ऐसे गवर्नमेंट की तरफ देखना भी शायद छोड़ दिया फॉर प्रोविजन ऑफ एजुकेशन, हेल्थ, वाटर, बेसिक्स, बहुत सारी सर्विसेज की। तो वो एक प्रॉब्लम जरूर हुई भी है, लेकिन डिमांड का कोई मुझे इशू नजर नहीं आता।
फैसल साहब, मैं अभी देख रहा हूँ एक पेपर ऑन रिटर्न्स टू एजुकेशन, और वो कह रहा है, आई मीन दिस वन पेपर, देयर कुड बी प्लेंटी ऑफ देम, सो आई एम जस्ट साइटिंग वन पेपर, जो कह रहा है कि जी डिमांड जो रिटर्न्स टू एजुकेशन ऑल द वे टू ऑलमोस्ट मैट्रिक आर नेगेटिव। सो फायदा आपको बहुत देर से होता है, और अगर होता है तो बहुत, फिर उसके साथ इसमें वो प्रोबेबिलिटी ऑफ एम्प्लॉयमेंट नहीं है। अगर प्रोबेबिलिटी ऑफ एम्प्लॉयमेंट आप डाल दें तो अगर आपको सरकारी नौकरी मिल जाए तो बड़ा फायदा है, अगर प्राइवेट हो तो इतना को खास फायदा नहीं, बिकॉज द प्रोबेबिलिटी ऑफ डिसमिसल इज वेरी हाई सरकारी नौकरी में। तो आई थिंक लेबर मार्केट इम्परफेक्शंस को हम वर्क इन नहीं करते। दूसरा जो आपने पॉइंट किया कि देयर आर सोशल बेनिफिट्स टू एजुकेशन, राइट टू लाइफ वगैरह, बिल्कुल सही है, आई एग्री विद दैट, बट दैट्स अगेन आई से दैट्स काइंड ऑफ ओरिएंटलिज्म एट वर्क, वेयर वी थिंक दैट एवरीबॉडी शुड लिव अकॉर्डिंग टू अस, जो एक ग्लोबल ब्यूरोक्रेसी की बन गई है बात कि सबको प्रोटेक्शन भी दो, ये भी करो, वो भी करो। आई सजेस्ट के उसके लिए फिर पैसे हमें बहुत चाहिए, एंड वी मस्ट सब्सिडाइज। वो जो बच्चा बैठा हुआ है जो बेचारा कहता है कि यार मुझे प्राइवेट रेट रिटर्न तो कोई नहीं है, आप मुझे अपने जैसा बनाना चाहते हैं तो फिर आप लोग बनाएं, मैं क्यों इसके पैसे दूं, और मैं क्यों उसमें इतना टाइम, पैसे सिर्फ बात नहीं, अपॉर्चुनिटी कॉस्ट भी है, टाइम एंड एफर्ट भी है। तो आर वी गोइंग टू टेक दिस प्रॉब्लम सीरियसली, और वी जस्ट अस्यूम कि नहीं जी नहीं, वी मस्ट फोर्स देम? इज इट फोर्स्ड एजुकेशन वी आर सीकिंग और वॉलंटरी एजुकेशन?
लेकिन दोनों ही बहुत है ना। मैं यही तो कह रहा हूँ कि जो 45% बच्चा प्राइवेट सेक्टर जा रहा है आपका, वो फोर्स तो नहीं है ना, वो जा रहा है, जो अफोर्ड कर सकता है वो जा रहा है। और जो आप ये देखिए 10-10 साल बच्चे आ रहे हैं इवन सरकारी स्कूल में जहाँ तालीम नहीं मिल रही, बहुत खराब क्वालिटी है। इससे बड़ी ट्रेजेडी क्या है कि 10 साल बच्चा ठहरता है और वो पढ़ लिख नहीं पाता है उसके एंड में, लेकिन वो फिर भी उन स्कूलों में बैठा है। आप इस साइड से देखिए ना नदीम, ये मत
उस
देखिए कि
साइड से
वो
देख ले तो बिल्कुल बिल्कुल सही है। बट जुल्फिकार साहब, देर आर एटलीस्ट 20 million kids who are voting with their feet, who are saying we
26
don't want your education. उनका क्या करेंगे?
26 million।
So the number is 26 million.
Who are voting with their feet, who are saying we don't want your education. पिंक फ्लॉयड का गाना याद है, we don't want no education, वो कह रहे हैं। तो उनकी बात ना सुनी जाए?
नहीं, उनकी बात सुनी जाए, और उनके लिए मैं जो वर्चुअल स्कूल का कॉन्सेप्ट दे रहा हूँ ना, वो उनको स्पेसिफिकली एड्रेस करता है कि भाई आप फाउंडेशन लिटरेसी सीख लें, आपको 12 साल स्कूल में जाने की जरूरत नहीं है, ठीक है ना। आप मतलब 2-3 साल में
साइड सॉल्व कर रहे हैं,
अपनी
डिमांड साइड क्या है? उनकी डिमांड साइड नहीं है, वो कहते हैं
डिमांड
हम नहीं
साइड है
पढ़ना
जी।
चाहते, फिर आप क्या
मैं
करेंगे?
आपको बताता हूँ कि नैफटेक की ट्रेनिंग हम ही करते हैं, ठीक है ना। एटलीस्ट द मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ फेडरल एजुकेशन करती है पैरेलल डिपार्टमेंट में, और जो सारी बहुत सारी ऐसी अपॉर्चुनिटीज हैं जो कि हमारे मुल्क में भी हैं और बाहर भी हैं, जिसके लिए आपको बेसिक लिटरेसी, न्यूमरेसी, डिजिटल लिटरेसी, फाइनेंशियल लिटरेसी चाहिए होती है, ठीक है ना। आजकल अगर आप पाकिस्तान की इकोनॉमिक पिक्चर आप देखें तो आपकी सैलरी क्लास इज लेस देन 30%, राइट। आपके जो मेजॉरिटी ऑफ जो आपकी वर्कफोर्स है 70 मिलियन के करीब, दैट कंसिस्ट ऑफ what is called semi-employed or own employed, self-employed population. That is the majority of the economic activity in this country. For to be gainfully क्या कहते हैं employed, semi-employed, you need financial literacy. Your livelihood can be helped by financial literacy, digital क्या कहते हैं literacy, and certifications which today require क्या कहते हैं metric education. We are going to remove that and we are going to sort of come up with a program where अगर आपके पास एक हुनर है, आप उसकी सर्टिफिकेशन लेना चाहते हैं, तो आप बेसिक एजुकेशन सर्टिफिकेशन ले लें, जो आपको 2-3 साल में आपको बेसिक लेवल ऑफ न्यूमरेसी, फाइनेंशियल लिटरेसी और 4-5 लाइफ स्किल्स और एक वोकेशनल ट्रेड की सर्टिफिकेशन आपको दे देगा। तो आपकी with that certification you can improve your livelihood in Pakistan, because now you're contracted, you're certified. और आप मिडल ईस्ट में भी उसकी तरह, हम ऑलरेडी वी आर वर्किंग विद सऊदी अरेबिया, अजरबैजानी गवर्नमेंट एंड अदर गवर्नमेंट्स, जाके हमारी सर्टिफिकेशन इंक्रीजिंगली ज्यादा एक्सेप्ट हो इंटरनेशनली. So all of these economic opportunities are tied to education. They are tied to this 26 million who have voted to not go to our school system. So we are providing them with an alternative which we think will be attractive to them. If it is not, we will deploy it. We will learn our lessons and we will make one program into 3 programs or 5 programs, because we understand that diversity in the population means diversity of needs and gaps. ये सारी चीजें are there, but we have to start somewhere. So we are going to start from one thing and build on it. This is my answer.
Gee, anybody else like to answer those? Because I still think we are not working on the demand side and it's too centralized a program. For example, where's the decentralization of the system? I also don't understand what role will the secretary play? Will he transfer teachers left, right, and center? Is he the principal accounting officer of the system, or the school's the principal accounting officer of their own?
Very good answer. A very good question. I can answer that if you like. So essentially, once ye jo pilots hote hain, when they grow into the administration and they become part of the thing, then the secretary is not the one who's running, implementing this. It is the essentially the school system, and they are responsible for that. However, best practice, और ये McKinsey ने भी लिखा है और बहुत सारे इंटरनेशनल ने भी किया है कि जब आपको रिफॉर्म करना होता है तो you need it from the outside. You need a mediating layer between the secretary or the principal accounting officer and the school systems. और ये mediating जो होता है layer, इसको targets दिए जाते हैं. अगर वो लोग achieve करते हैं तो they are in fine, otherwise they are removed and new people are put there. So उनका total accountability होती है इन चीजों को आगे बढ़ाने के लिए, but for that they are given a wide range of delegation and delegation of power. So this is a system. इसके अंदर जो लोग इन्वॉल्व होते हैं उनके अंदर क्या कहते हैं, कंटिन्यूटी ऑफ लीडरशिप होती है. So once you are in this system, you are going to be there for some time in this position till you accomplish results. So all of those best practices.
I hope you are aware. I hope you are aware there are a number of research papers that have shown that McKinsey is self-serving. McKinsey wants the consultant to be central in the system because that's how they make money. Abhi recently Mazakutu's kitab hai Bitcoin, and usse pehle when McKinsey comes to town. So I think quite frankly, we need a reflexive system that's capable of making its own changes, not an outside driven system. We've had this World Bank, ADB, all the kinds of things, including my former organization, IMF, trying to drive change here. And where have we got? We've got nowhere. When are we going to build reflexive systems?
Let me sort of say that we are not blindly following McKinsey. I just mentioned McKinsey because that I found to be the most relevant. I did not start with McKinsey. In fact, I used to work for a rival firm when I was in the United States. So I have no great love for McKinsey. It's one of good consulting, and I don't agree with all of their methodologies. And yes, there is something to it that they want to put a consultant in everything. But that is one model. Hamara jo model hai, it is not the McKinsey model. It is our own model. It's called National Digital and Innovation in Education Strategy. Agar iske basis, iske jo influences hain, वो to a lesser extent OECD ने भी इस पे काम किया है, Oxford, Cambridge ने भी काम किया है.
Why are you giving
because
a central role? I mean, what have they done to deserve that central role? And just because they speak English with you, you're going to get them?
Okay, so in the long term, we need a concentration of intelligent people who are interested in reforming education at one place, right? अगर हम उसको गोइंग बाय प्रीवियस प्रैक्टिस, अगर हम उसको गवर्नमेंट में डालेंगे तो वो स्टैग्नेट कर जाते हैं वहां पर, राइट? बिकॉज वहां पर अभी जो हमारा सिस्टम है, और अगेन हम इस स्ट्रेटेजी के जरिए सारे सिस्टम को रिफॉर्म नहीं कर सकते, हम सिर्फ एजुकेशन सिस्टम पे ही फोकस कर सकते हैं, ठीक है ना? तो हम सर्टेन प्रैक्टिसेस वी हैव टू वर्क इन दैट एनवायरनमेंट and leverage it to achieve our outcomes. So अगर हम अभी अगर ये कैपेसिटी गवर्नमेंट में डालते हैं तो वो तो हमें लगता है कि स्टैग्नेट कर जाएगी 5 साल 10 साल में वगैरह में. कोई भी रिसर्च इंस्टीट्यूशन गवर्नमेंट का इतना कामयाब नहीं हुआ, उसने फ्लरिश नहीं किया, सिर्फ पाकिस्तान में भी नहीं, इंटरनेशनली भी. अब ब्राइट यूनिवर्सिटीज जो हैं, देखें हार्वर्ड, कैम्ब्रिज, ऑक्सफोर्ड, कैम्ब्रिज अपनी इकोनॉमीज को बहुत इन्फ्लुएंस करती हैं, उनकी रेगुलेशन को बहुत इन्फ्लुएंस करते हैं, उनकी पॉकेट को इन्फ्लुएंस करते हैं. सो अगर हमने टॉप 50 एजुकेशन सिस्टम्स ऑफ द वर्ल्ड में पहुंचना है तो इवेंचुअली हमने गोल रखना है कि यूनिवर्सिटीज की कैपेसिटी टू डू दिस को भी हमने बिल्ड करनी है. वो कैसे बिल्ड करेंगे कि जब वहां पर हम प्रोफेसर की पोजीशंस डालेंगे तो हमारे जो बेस्ट एक्सपर्ट्स हैं वो आएंगे, अट्रैक्ट होंगे इस पोजीशन में, एंड दे विल प्रॉब्ली कम एंड हेल्प अस. और ये हमारी कैपेसिटी अपने आप को अपग्रेड करेगी. जो हमारे बेस्ट ब्रेन्स हैं, जो कि हमारे गोल्ड मेडलिस्ट हैं, इस सब्जेक्ट की तरफ रीओरिएंट करेंगे. एंड यस, इट विल टेक अ फ्यू ईयर्स, लेकिन अगर हम शुरू नहीं करेंगे और हम बैठ जाएंगे कि यार ये तो बहुत मुश्किल है और इसको हम नहीं करेंगे, तो आई थिंक बेसिकली दैट इज अ सेल्फ फुलफिलिंग प्रोफेसी. तो हम ये करना पड़ेगा. लास्ट पॉइंट अबाउट डिसेंट्रलाइजेशन. देखें, आप इंडिया को कंपेयर करें चाइना को, वन इज अ सेंट्रलाइज्ड मॉडल एंड वन टू अ सर्टेन एक्सटेंट इज अ डिसेंट्रलाइज्ड मॉडल के अपना स्टेट्स अपना करती हैं। आप खुद ही जेज कर लें कि इनिशियल डेवलपमेंट जो होती है सेंट्रलाइज्ड मॉडल से ज्यादा इफेक्टिवली होती है कि डिसेंट्रलाइज्ड मॉडल से ज्यादा इफेक्टिव होती है। इसके बारे में हम एक लंबी डिबेट कर सकते हैं, लेकिन आपको इस कमेंट से पता चल गया होगा कि मेरी ओपिनियन क्या है। मेरा ख्याल है कि देयर इज अ स्टेज इन दिस, पहले स्टेज में आप सेंट्रलाइज तरीके से एक मिनिमम लेवल ऑफ परफॉर्मेंस पे सिस्टम को लेके आते हैं।
Let me bring in two other people who are very anxious
Sure.
to speak. and
मैं
then we'll close.
थोड़ा सा इसके ऊपर ऐड कर दूं जो आपका पॉइंट था
जी।
कि डिमांड साइड, कि भाई क्या वाकई
हाँ जी।
डिमांड है एजुकेशन की
demand
कि नहीं,
है?
तो फिर पर्टिकुलरली देन टॉक अबाउट आउट ऑफ स्कूल चिल्ड्रन। तो असल में इसको अगर इस तरीके से पुट करें कि यार आपको आउट ऑफ स्कूल चिल्ड्रन 3 मिलियन से लेके 26 मिलियन आपके हो चुके हैं, देन वी नीड टू फिगर आउट व्हाट इज द रैशनल, व्हाट इज द रीजन बिहाइंड दिस। सो मेरे ख्याल
People are
से जो
voting with their feet यार, people are voting with their feet. मुझे मैकडोनल्ड पसंद नहीं, क्या बुरी बात है इसमें?
नहीं, इसमें अगर देखें तो सबसे ज्यादा मेजर जो फैक्टर बच्चों को स्कूल के अंदर टीचर की जो टीचर उनको किस तरह से एंगेज रख रहा है कि नहीं रख रहा, क्या वो लर्निंग को एंजॉय कर रहे हैं कि नहीं कर रहे। कुछ तो जैसे बात है जो टीचर की प्रॉपर ट्रेनिंग नहीं है, तो वो जिस तरह से बच्चों के ऊपर सख्ती वगैरह कर रहा होगा, तो वो जैसे बात है उस तरीके से लर्निंग। तो आपने टीचर्स की ट्रेनिंग के ऊपर एट द सेम टाइम आपने ये तो मेक श्योर करना है कि फ्यूचर में आपके आउट ऑफ स्कूल चिल्ड्रन की रेशियो जो है ना वो तो कम हो, जो हो चुके हैं उसके लिए आप स्ट्रेटेजीज वगैरह
क्यों
बनाएंगे
कम
कि आप
हो?
उनके लिए फिर
जस्ट
आप
बिकॉज आपको नहीं पसंद तो कम हो, ये तो बात नहीं मुझे ठीक लगती। वो खुद क्यों नहीं डिमांड करते? आप लोग उनकी डिमांड को क्यों नहीं देखते? टीचर ट्रेनिंग हमने 70 साल से की, इट हैज फेल्ड। अब टीचर ट्रेनिंग से आगे निकल जाए ना, 70
अच्छा
साल
नहीं,
से
इसमें
हमने
आप बिल्कुल ठीक कह रहे हैं। जो नहीं करना चाहते बिल्कुल वो तो उनके लिए राइट है कि अगर वो नहीं पढ़ना चाहते, वो कुछ और जल्दी लाइफ के अंदर जो है ना वो प्रैक्टिकल लाइफ के अंदर जाना चाह रहे हैं, वो उनका अपना राइट है, बिल्कुल जाएं। लेकिन इसमें से बहुत सारे लोग तो ऐसे भी हैं ना कि जो बेसिकली उनका ये राइट नहीं था, वो मजबूरन इसमें आए हैं। तो एक्चुअली हमने उनको भी तो
ये
एड्रेस
तो
करना है ना।
एड्रेस करने वाली
जी।
बात है ना यार, ये तो फोर्स कर रहे हैं उन्हें। आप मुझे बताइए, कैन वी डू वी हैव अ मॉडल विदाउट फोर्सिंग किड्स?
नहीं, हम फोर्स कर रहे हैं, हम तो ये कह रहे हैं कि उनको हम एनवायरनमेंट दें, उसके बाद वो अगर उसके अंदर एंगेज होकर आगे एजुकेशन वगैरह वो ले रहे हैं तो ठीक है। अगर उनमें से स्टिल वो चाहते हैं कि नहीं यार हम अदर मीन्स है, हम प्रैक्टिकल लाइफ के अंदर जल्दी जाना चाह रहे हैं, तो दे हैव द ऑप्शन। लेकिन एटलीस्ट जो आउट ऑफ स्कूल चिल्ड्रन जिनको राइट था वो पढ़ना चाहते थे और उनको अपॉर्चुनिटीज नहीं दी गई, एटलीस्ट हम उनको तो अपॉर्चुनिटी दें। हम फोर्स नहीं कर रहे, हम उनको अपॉर्चुनिटीज दे रहे हैं कि अगर वो पढ़ना चाहें तो पढ़ें। मतलब पॉइंट तो सिंपल सा ही है।
ठीक, वेरी गुड। नादिया ताहिर, क्विकली।
I would like to comment on one thing. This is a very fancy comment given by the fellow कि जी जिनके पास आउट ऑफ स्कूल हैं तो उनके लिए टेक्नोलॉजी है और वो लोग इससे फायदा उठा सकते हैं। जस्ट लाइक अ कमेंट कि इफ यू डोंट हैव द रोटी यू हैव केक। आई एम वेरी सॉरी, इतने पैसे आप लगा रहे हैं, कनेक्शंस एकेडमी फ्री दे रही है, K-12 एजुकेशन ऑनलाइन है, पेयरसन की है, बेटर स्टैंडर्ड्स हैं, एंड वी आर ट्राइंग टू बिल्ड अ सिस्टम जहां पे हम ई तालीम चला नहीं सकते, and then we think that we could have a system which could give education to all and will fulfill the needs of everybody. So I think please do consider before allocating resources to these things. एक और जो बात बहुत ज्यादा बार बार हो रही है कि स्टूडेंट्स की डिमांड नहीं है। K-12 is not an issue of demand, it is a issue of right, and it's a basic right, basic human right, and it's as per the constitution, it is a state's obligation to provide education to all these. So when we are talking about fancy things and we are not discussing the rights thing, I think we are totally off the track. Thank you.
बिल्कुल ठीक है, बिल्कुल ठीक है, यानी कि उनको डंडा मार के पढ़ाएं। बिल्कुल ठीक है जी, डंडा मार के पढ़ाएं, उनको फैशिज्म ले आए।
आप
जी
पढ़ा सकते हैं डंडा मार के, लेकिन देना सबको फर्ज।
जी
नदीम, मैं आपसे क्वेश्चन पूछता हूँ। नदीम, मैं आपसे क्वेश्चन पूछता हूँ। आपके भी 2-3 बच्चे हैं, उनको जो आपने शुरू में जब वो कहते थे कि हमने बाथरूम में नहीं जाना, तो आप उनको डंडा मार के लेके जाते थे कि कहते थे कि भाई ठीक है आप फ्री मार्केट जहां पर आपने जाना है मतलब जाएं? कोई थोड़ा बहुत डंडा तो चाहिए होता है ना, कि नहीं? सो SDG 4 और एजुकेशन जो है ना, अगर आप SDG 4 के लेंस से देखें तो ये थोड़ा बहुत आपको मैंडेटरी करना पड़ता है और आपकी सर्टेन लेवल ऑफ प्रिपरेशन देनी पड़ती है, वेदर दे लाइक इट और नॉट।
बात है जी, सिंपल बात है।
आपके अपने बच्चों को देख ले, अब वो क्या है, किधर लेवल है। यू कैन आर्ग्यू कि K-12 इज नॉट नेसेसरी, मे बी वी जस्ट हैव दैट अदर प्रोग्राम, जिस तरह मैंने कहा कि 3 साल का, यू मेक दैट एन ऑप्शन एंड दैट इज ऑब्वियसली फॉर द पीपल टू डिसाइड, द गवर्नमेंट टू डिसाइड। लेकिन आपने ऑप्शन देना है और उनको कहना है कि ये आपकी मिनिमम चीज है, इतनी हम आपके एज योर government, we think that you need certain numeracy, literacy, digital literacy, or whether you like it or not, you are going to have these skills. उसके बाद तुम देखना कि तुमने हायर एजुकेशन करनी है कि नहीं करनी, किस लेवल पे करनी है. आप इस तरह नहीं छोड़ सकते कि उसको आपने पैदा किया है और उसको 20 साल की उम्र में रियलाइज हो रहा है. मेरा भी नौकर मुझे कहता है, मेरा ड्राइवर भी कहता है कि काश मेरे पास एजुकेशन होती, मैं आपके ऑफिस में काम करता और मैं आगे बढ़ जाता. उसका वो खुद कह रहा है. तो मतलब है कि we shouldn't put people in this situation where they regret their decisions. We all know what it takes to succeed in life, and we should provide that opportunity to our fellow countrymen.
अच्छा जी, थैंक यू वेरी मच जी, वेरी काइंड. मेरा ड्राइवर मुझे ये कहता है जी कि मैंने अपने बेटे को नहीं पढ़ाना क्योंकि आप चाहते हैं वो आपके रोड साइंस पढ़े. मैं आप कहता हूँ आप खुद ही रोड साइंस पढ़े, क्योंकि मेरे ड्राइवर को अगर आगे
बच्चों को आप बाथरूम भेजते थे कि नहीं?
मैंने एक दफा अपना वो उसको कहा था, एजुकेशन ऐसे ही बहुत बड़ा था, एजुकेशन की बीबी आई हुई थी. मैंने उनको कहा था कि अगर, आई विल रिपीट दैट, कि इफ माय ड्राइवर हैज द सेम एजुकेशन एज मी, I can't take him to Punjab Club and give him a copy of Dickens to read in 120 degrees heat and say, enjoy yourself. He has to come into the club. So unless you have social mobility, I think we are conning our kids के education सिर्फ लेके बैठ जाएं. हाँ, डंडे से पढ़ा ले उनको, because that's like God. You're making them in your own image. I would like to see a paper, and I think I'll try and get it done. I think returns to madrasa education may be higher than the returns to conventional education. So if that's the case, then society is signaling us to take madrasa education. So why don't we foster madrasa education? But these are all questions, tough questions. I don't want to debate this. They're all tough questions that I think we should all ask ourselves, because it's too convenient to say कि जी हम सिर्फ बच्चों को जबरदस्ती पढ़ाएंगे.
Can I suggest one thing?
जी.
Can I suggest that आपने ये जो इकोनॉमिक एनालिसिस किया पाइड का, यू डू इट ऑन द स्ट्रेटेजी. आप अज्यूम करें कि स्ट्रेटेजी इज सक्सेसफुल और उसका आरओआई निकालें, एंड देन एजुकेट अस, ऑल ऑफ अस, कि भाई आप करंट सिस्टम को क्यों कर रहे हैं. हम खुद अग्रीड हैं आपसे कि करंट सिस्टम का आरओआई इतना अच्छा नहीं है, लेकिन हम एक आपको फ्यूचर प्रपोज कर रहे हैं, आप उसका आरओआई निकालें. एन इकोनॉमिस्ट, यू कैन डू दैट, योर ऑर्गेनाइजेशन कैन डू दैट, और वो हमें सारों को बताएं.
बिल्कुल.
और अगर उसमें एडजस्टमेंट रिक्वायर्ड है तो उसको एडजस्ट कर लेते हैं.
The ROI is based on the current market conditions. They can, you are in Silicon Valley. If you make an iPhone or something, you can't, वो जो कहते हैं ना, जो उसको कहते हैं, क्या कहते हैं, डिजाइन थिंकिंग, वो जो कहते हैं जा जाके बार बार टेस्ट करो. तो आई एम जस्ट आस्किंग कि मार्केट टेस्ट तो कर लेना. देखें कि मार्केट क्या डिमांड कर रही है. मार्केट इस वक्त डिमांड कर रही है कि जी हमें मदरसा एजुकेशन चाहिए, या लीगल एजुकेशन चाहिए, या मिलिट्री एजुकेशन चाहिए. एंड आई थिंक दैट्स व्हाट द मार्केट शुड बी हेडेड टुवर्ड्स. मेरे पास जो बच्चे आते हैं, फॉर एग्जांपल बच्चा है पॉलिटिक्स पढ़ के, इकोनॉमिक्स पढ़ के, मैं तो कहता हूँ यार तो बड़े बेवकूफ हो. व्हाई डिड यू फॉलो दिस? पाकिस्तान स्टडीज फॉर एग्जांपल, पाकिस्तान स्टडीज कर लेते हैं, फिर बेचारे क्या करें. These are all things that we should think about. Anyway, great webinar. Thank you very much, folks. Lots to think about. Sorry, some people could not be taken because I don't know why they couldn't be unmuted. Maybe it's the government doing same things on the internet. Zulfiqar Saab, everybody,
Hello.
thank you. Thank you.
Yes, I just want to say something.
जी
sorry, मैं आपको इंटरवीन कर रहा हूँ. Actually, I'm waiting for long time. मैं basically I'm calling you from I'm in Bahrain right now, school principal. अच्छा, मैं डॉक्टर आबिद की बात को थोड़ा सा आगे लेकर चलूंगा.
वीजा नहीं देता हमें यार, बहरीन से क्या बात करनी है.
सर, मोस्ट वेलकम. You are welcome anytime.
अभी
सर आप
वीजा नहीं दे रही. आप कह रहे हैं हम एजुकेट हो जाए. एजुकेट होके कोई वीजा नहीं देता, हमें क्या करें.
अच्छा, मैं थोड़ी सी बात को आगे लेकर चलूंगा. असल में मैं जो बात करना चाह रहा हूँ, मैं डॉक्टर आबिद की बात को आगे लेकर चल रहा हूँ कि एक तो बच्चों को ब्रिंगिंग स्कूल चिल्ड्रन इज नॉट डिफिकल्ट, बट रिटेनिंग देम इज अ डिफिकल्ट टास्क फॉर पाकिस्तान. मैं प्रपोज करना चाहता हूँ कि उनको रिटेंशन के लिए जब तक आप स्कूलों को रेगुलेट नहीं करेंगे इन टर्म्स ऑफ प्रैक्टिसेस, इन टर्म्स ऑफ क्वालिटी ऑफ प्रोविजंस, उस वक्त तक ये आगे नहीं चल सकते. अब उस हिस्से में हमने फर्स्ट टाइम हमने एक ऐप डेवलप की है इवेल्युएट के नाम से, जो स्कूलों की क्वालिटी श्योरेंस जस्ट लाइक ऑफस्टेट कर रहा है, जिस तरह KHDA कर रहा है, इस तरह हमारे पास बहरीन में BQ है, बहरीन क्वालिटी श्योरेंस है. ये ऐप हमारी इस वक्त 3 मुल्कों में चल रही है. ब्रुनाई में हमने
ये आप आ जाए और मार्केट कर दें. ये तो मार्केटिंग की बात है, ये इसका हमारे साथ कोई ताल्लुक नहीं. हम तहकीक की बात करें. आप आ जाएं, जुल्फिकार साहब से मिल ले, मिनिस्ट्री से मिल ले, मार्केट कर ले अपनी ऐप. बड़ी अच्छी बात है. हम
सर हम आए थे, जुल्फिकार साहब से मिले थे.
फिर दोबारा आ जाए, कोई बात नहीं. मार्केटिंग की बात है, इसका हमारे से कोई ताल्लुक नहीं. ठीक है जी, बहुत शुक्रिया जी. थैंक यू वेरी मच folks. It's been wonderful. We've enjoyed it a lot. Zulfiqar साहब, महबूब, आबिद साहब, फैसल बारी, everybody. Thank you. खुदा हाफिज.
Khuda Hafiz. Thank you everyone. Thank you everyone.